Chapter 101. Capture the Devil. Kazan. Outside the car, Johnny and Huss stood 10 meters away, an indifferent woman with short blonde hair. "You make me feel sick, Angel." Johnny pointed at Luther with his finger. You don't deserve to be an angel. My existence is only for the task, to complete the task, at all costs, including life." Crackling, the lightning flashed and intertwined around Luther, and strands of lightning blasted the already dilapidated ground into pits. "You are a stumbling block preventing me from capturing Kazan, and you should be crushed. Angels who hurt innocents are not qualified to wreak havoc in the world." At this moment, an angry voice came from the sky. Roar. Immediately afterwards, there was a non-human roar, and Luther dodged slightly. The next second, a huge green figure like a cannonball fell on Luther's majesty, splashing gravel all over the sky. With airwaves, Hulk appears. The moment Hulk landed on the ground, he waved his fist and slammed at Luther's head. Luther's eyes were sharp, his head tilted back slightly, and the huge fist brushed against the bridge of her nose. She stretched out her hand and grabbed Hulk's wrist. "Throw it back hard." Bang! Like a cannonball, Hulk was thrown hundreds of meters away and finally landed on the road. The huge momentum made Hulk slide on the ground for a certain distance. "Wow, that guy looks really interesting." When Huss saw Hulk appearing, his eyes lit up immediately, as if he saw something of interest. Johnny didn't bother to pay attention to it. A Quinjet fighter plane was floating in the sky in the distance. Captain Steve Rogers, wearing the modified classic suit, jumped off the plane, opened the parachute and floated beside Johnny and Huss. He still holds the shield that countless Americans are familiar with. "Aha, I think I know you, Captain America." When Huss saw Rogers, he looked happy and danced, but his plump face was trembling with the movements, and he looked quite festive. Rogers took a look at Huss and the unique outfit on his body, frowned slightly. His heart was full of vigilance, but he still maintained due courtesy. "Hello, sir. I like your politeness. Unlike this guy, you just do it when you come up." Facing Huss' sarcasm, Johnny simply ignored it, but stared at Hood in the distance. "Get out of the way, Angel. Don't stop me." The anxious Johnny only wanted to complete the deal with the Angel Maliki. If it failed, then Rosie. This was something he couldn't accept. Luther didn't want to talk nonsense at all, and glanced at Captain America, and Iron Man Tony Stark who came out of the bus in the distance, and finally fixed on the faces of Johnny and Huss. "I said, the stumbling block that blocked me should be cleaned up." Boom. As soon as the words fell, the entire road shook fiercely, and Luther's figure immediately disappeared in place, turning into a flash of lightning and rushing towards Johnny and Huss. She was going to kill the two biggest threats. But Luther never expected that Rogers would stand up first and stand in front of the two of them. Luther never cared about the so-called innocents, and he raised his fist and punched him hard. Boom! The air wave was turbulent, and the huge force and speed of the fist rubbed against the air, producing a huge cone-shaped air wave. Rogers' skin hurt from the terrible fist wind. With his reaction beyond the limit of human beings, he almost couldn't react. At this juncture, he exploded with an astonishing fighting consciousness, holding the shield with both hands in front of him. Clang, the fist and the shield collided in an instant, and a clear roar like a bell exploded in the world, and the turbulent airflow blew away in all directions like a mountain torrent. The yellow sand on both sides of the road was engulfed by the air wave and ravaged. The ground under Rogers' feet couldn't bear the force even more, and it was sunken. Rogers' entire upper body, including his head, was shrunk behind the shield, his face ugly. This power is really powerful that he has never seen before. He feels like he is resisting a high-speed impacting locomotive. If he hadn't been determined enough, all his shields would have been blown away on the spot. Fortunately, he still resisted. On the contrary, Luther was a little surprised by this. She never expected that a mere human could resist her blow, but she was just surprised. She withdrew her fist and swept her right leg from bottom to top. Boom. This time, Rogers couldn't resist, and the whole person was blown away more than 10 meters with the shield. But at this moment, Johnny opened his mouth and suddenly spewed out a mouthful of raging flames. The terrifying flames have spewed out, engulfing Luther in an instant, but Huss, who was on the side, showed a helpless expression. "Dude, she is a battle angel, and the flames have no effect on her at all." Sure enough, as soon as Huss finished speaking, he saw Luther rushing out of the raging flames. Even his suit was fine. She stretched out her hand, and the electric light in her hand exploded. The turbulent current raged through the air and bombarded Johnny. The latter followed Roger's footsteps and was blasted tens of meters in the same posture, and then slid on the ground for more than 10 meters. Luther didn't even look at it and set his next target on Huss. The latter seemed to be frightened, his fat body shuddered, and he quickly assumed the classic posture of the milk method, raised his fat hands, and hurriedly shouted, "Wow, Angel, I just hold on to it. It's just a task, and of course it doesn't matter." Angel Luther stared at it with merciless eyes. After thinking about it for a while, she felt that this hunter was very difficult to deal with. If she wanted to kill him, it would take her a lot of effort, which would hinder her from capturing Kazan. So he said indifferently, "Give up your job. If you catch up, you will die." She looked at the motorcycle a few meters away, walked a few steps, and came to the ghost-face Harley that was still burning with hellfire. She snorted coldly and reached out her hand to grab the handlebar. Zila, the electric light flicked across the entire Harley motorcycle from his hand in an instant, obliterating the hellfire in the car, and the original ghost-face Harley motorcycle returned to its original appearance. She got into the car and was about to start the engine and leave, but there was a roar in her ears. She felt something, tilted her head slightly, and saw a beam of plasma beam cannon bombarding the ground in front of her along her temples. Luther squinted his head and saw the sky behind him. A red and gold armor was floating in the air, with particle flames spraying from his feet, and he stretched out his hand. It was obvious that this blow was sent by him. "How dare you attack an angel, fragile mortal?" Her right foot was on the ground, and her already cold voice was a few degrees lower. His eyes were murderous, but this didn't scare Tony at all. He was a proud person himself. He was never afraid of demons or angels. What's more, what Luther had done before had angered this superhero. The deep, metallic voice came from Tony's mask. "You killed 5 innocent lives and put a dozen innocent people on the verge of danger. If heaven is full of characters like you, then one day, human beings will destroy and pull out your ruthless and hypocritical birdmen." Tony's words didn't anger Luther, or in other words, she didn't put human beings in her eyes at all. She didn't talk nonsense, and a gleam of lightning flashed in her eyes. Rumbling above the sky, a thick lightning pillar blasted down out of thin air. Tony's battle armor issued an alarm and automatically dodged in an emergency, but the lightning pillar was too fast, and it still slammed into Tony's body. Tony's whole body was engulfed by the shocking thunderbolt, and his battle armor hit the ground heavily with green smoke emitting from his whole body. "Interesting iron shells, but there are only so many." Luther raised his hand, planning to launch the next blow to completely kill the prisoner who dared to disrespect her. But at this moment, she noticed the horrified eyes of Huss, the silent hunter. That look was not aimed at himself, but at him. Luther suddenly looked up at the sky. Smiley face. The beautiful pupil shrank suddenly. The hand that was originally raised was unconsciously lowered, and I saw the sky, and several figures were floating like that at some point. An extremely terrifying aura exudes from her body, overlooking her. The powerful breath even made the surrounding air ripple. That kind of oppressive force seemed to bring the heaven and the earth closer together, turning the mountains and rivers upside down, and made Luther feel a sense of urgency unconsciously. "This is human?" Luther got off the locomotive. Even in his cold and ruthless heart, there were waves. The world in heaven is like a wild and backward world. This is just the back garden of heaven, and human beings are just a small race born out of heaven to achieve its purpose. Why Luther doesn't put human beings in his eyes is because in her eyes, there is no difference between human beings and ants. Kill a group, and there will be more human beings. She is an angel, a god, and an existence beyond the reach of human beings. But now, she didn't expect that right here, at this moment, there would be a few human beings whose strength even made her feel dangerous. This simply overturned her concept of hundreds of thousands of years. I seem to feel something is wrong. Hell Hunter Huss Fatty trembled, swallowed unconsciously, and took 2 steps back. His soul was already trembling under that heavy pressure, which made him almost feel that he was facing an existence at the level of a demon king, a real demon king. Even if these people were not comparable to the demon king, he felt that killing himself was at least very easy. Especially Zhao Lijiao. He seemed to see a more majestic and profound existence from these people in a trance. Great Lord, what is wrong with this world? Isn't it because he hasn't returned to the earth for more than 10 years? Why did the earth give birth to such a bunch of monsters? Huss looked at the group of young boys and girls in the sky, and their unique sacred aura, and suddenly remembered something. Not long ago, He heard that there seemed to be a major event in hell. There was a great being who broke into hell and fought a battle with Mephisto. As a result, there were different opinions, but that great being left unharmed. According to rumors, the demon king Mephisto seems to have offended the great in the world. Could it be? Are these people the emissaries of that great divine mansion? Also, is he human? Huss felt that his guess was correct, and he also felt that Luther seemed to be in trouble. Involuntarily, Huss began to gloat in his heart, but fortunately he did not hurt innocent people. That guy shouldn't be counted. Anyway, if he wasn't killed, he could be saved. Huss thought of the headless cowboy. Who are you guys? At this time, Luther raised his head and looked at the boys and girls seriously. The figures of these boys and girls slowly descended and stood on the four sides. One of the tall and straight boys was outside the bus, holding out his hand. The palm of the hand shone with golden light, and golden ripples floated across the bus. Thank you guys for your support. Thank you so much. Wah. Chapter 102. The self-righteous angel, one of the red-haired girls, glanced at the bus, then turned to look at Luther. Her pretty face was already full of bitter anger. What did you do? I'm here to finish. Luther felt the danger, and his cold face changed slightly. It's just that before she finished speaking, the girl had already disappeared in place. Luther's eyes shrank, and his eyes blurred. The girl had already appeared in front of her, and pointed at Luther with her white index finger. The red nails on the index finger were so bright that Luther wanted to dodge, but it was too late, and the index finger was already aimed at the center of her eyebrows. Bang! The person appeared in front of him, and the sound of the bursting air reached his ears. It can be seen that this speed has exceeded the speed of sound propagation. The sharpness of the fingertips suddenly appeared, and even the most outstanding Archangel Luther unconsciously sank in his heart. Sure enough, he saw bright pink halos blooming from the girl's fingertips and exploded. His head was pierced. The latter was blown away by the huge impact. The turbulent airflow scattered in all directions, blowing the hem of the girl's pink coat constantly swinging. Luther slid hundreds of meters on the ground before collapsing weakly on the ground. This view, he felt the impact completely exploded, especially for the hunter Huss, who was in a cold sweat unconsciously. He first looked at Luther, whose head was smashed a few hundred meters away, and then looked at that the expressionless girl couldn't help but almost groaned. Great Lord, I feel like I must have been kicked in the head by the horse. Scorpio Saint Seiya. On the side, Johnny said something hoarsely. Let Huss's heart move. Scorpio Saint Seiya? Is that girl? Then other people are also saints of other constellations? He kept thinking about this word in his mind, and he seemed to have never heard of this word after living for tens of thousands of years. Could it be a group of people who just emerged recently? Descendants of God's mansion? These people's souls are full of holiness and purity, and their quality is frighteningly high. I'm afraid they are much nobler than those stinky bird people in heaven. This is really incredible. There are such a large number of monsters in the world. When Huss' eyes rolled around, Rogers couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when he saw the saints appearing on the stage. Tony, who was smashed to the ground by the thunder pillar, stood up tremblingly with smoke all over his body. The display screen in front of him is surprisingly bright, obviously because of the current overload. The current crackling under his feet is constantly exploding. It is the MK armor that is outputting overloaded energy. Fortunately, when Tony was developing the armor, he had considered such a thing, so he specially added the function of absorbing and diluting energy. Otherwise, just at that moment, the MK battle armor must not be able to withstand the overload power energy and explode. Tony opened the mask, his face full of lingering fear. Sir, the shell of the battle armor is damaged in many places. The temperature and pressure exceed the threshold. The energy-absorbing device is damaged, and the left-hand thruster is scrapped. We may need further optimization. I feel it too. Tony glanced around and found Tina and the other saints, and he was somewhat relieved. The angry Tina was on fire. For her, although she might not know the people in the bus, they were all human beings after all. She absolutely could not forgive a group of so-called angels for daring to kill them. She glanced past Johnny and looked at Hellhunter Huss. The dark aura in this guy's body was as bright as a bonfire in the dark night. How could it escape her eyes? Seeing this from Tina, Huss couldn't help shivering. His whole body trembled, and he quickly waved his hands. Wow, beautiful girl, that has nothing to do with me. I'm just here to perform work. Beifa, I'm here to catch Kazan, and in a sense, I'm also here to help you. It has to be said that the gaze pressure of Tina and several other saint fighters is really terrifying, and Huss has no arrogance in the past at all. Ugly soul, Tina said with disgust. But as Huss said, he didn't do anything harmful, and naturally Tina would not take the initiative. People who come from don't have a noble soul. Huss was not angry. The fat man was very conscientious, and he would selectively admit to those who shouldn't be provoked. Facing Huss' self-mockery, Tina snorted coldly. It doesn't matter what your jobs are, but if I find out that you are doing whatever you want in the world, then I will make you miserable. Huss laughed dryly and quickly nodded in response. In the past, he was quite honest. Basically, he didn't do much activities in the human world. But now he met a group of scary little perverts. He had to be more honest. Isn't it good to go sightseeing in the world? That idiot Luther looked aloof. He must be deflated now. Huss stood aside honestly, and Tina asked Johnny, "Are you Johnny the Ghost Rider that Bart said? You seem to have a personality." It has to be said that the shape of Ghost Rider is indeed full of imagination. Just by looking at it, one can think of a series of dark words such as heavy metal and darkness. Cool enough to explode. Even Tina liked it quite a bit and almost took out her mobile phone to take a photo or something. Fortunately, Tina knew the importance and asked, "Do you have anything to do with what happened in Dallas?" Kazan, the demon king of hell, came to the world, trying to break the passage between and the world, and summoned the devil to make trouble in the world. I made a deal with an angel, and I want to catch him and hand him over to heaven. Holding back the impatience in his heart, Johnny said hoarsely, and told the ins and outs of the past. He knew very well that if there was a Saint Seiya, his chances of catching Kazan would be even greater. When Tina learned about the transaction, she frowned and looked at Ella behind her. "It feels a little strange. Is it such a coincidence?" Tina whispered, and couldn't help but become suspicious of the low-level angel Malachi. Let's not talk about whether there are such people among the angels in heaven, even if that Malachi has a heart for the world, and he can't bear to fight and spread to the world. But how could he find a Ghost Rider who hadn't awakened for a long time? How could he be so sure that Ghost Rider could successfully capture a demon king? Moreover, Rosie's illness was too strange. Chapter 103. Archangel Michael. The yellow sand blows across the endless, desolate kilometers. Tina, who knew the ins and outs, was full of doubts, but the doubts only lasted there for a while. Anyway, no matter what the reason is, let's solve the matter of the devil Kazan first. Ong, a ray of holy, crystal-clear white light flickered in the distance. When everyone looked up, they saw the Archangel Luther, who was supposed to have his head smashed by Tina, soaked in this holy light. His brain was blown apart, then it returned to its original state. But there is still a streak of pink-purple lines on the cheeks. The terrible pain continued to stimulate Luther's spiritual will, making her complexion uncontrollably take on the color of pain. "She's not dead yet?" Tony asked in surprise. The physique and strength of angels are very special, and they are unique in terms of restoration and healing. Huss was not surprised at all. It is impossible for a person of this level to be killed by ordinary means. And as long as the soul is immortal, even if the body dies countless times, it can be recovered. This has something in common with hell. Then kill once. Standing beside Tina, Ella's voice sounded like a boundless winter, exuding icy air. Following her words, the surrounding hot temperature dropped to 0 in an instant. In the sky, strands of crystal-clear snowflakes slowly fell. Ella's beautiful eyes were already rendered by blue light, and the small universe in her body gradually began to burn. Wearing a blue coat on the surface, azure flames bloomed and swayed. Danger! These two characters instantly appeared in Huss' mind. In Huss' frightened expression, Ella stepped forward. Ignoring Luther's shouting, "Wait a minute," she crossed her hands and finally punched Luther hard. Boom! The endless freezing air storm rolled the snowflakes all over the sky, skipped over Johnny and Huss in front, and swept towards Luther. In an instant, the world seemed to have turned into an endless winter. The road, the land, and the surrounding yellow sand and weeds all turned into a vast expanse of whiteness in an instant. And Luther saw the terrible freezing air storm coming, and frantically issued an early warning in her heart. She gritted her teeth, ignoring the pain from the soul, and raised her right hand high to the sky. "Chop it down." It fell on her body. Boom! The earth trembled and shook, and Luther was engulfed by the freezing storm. But the thunder column in the sky continued to impact the freezing storm, and the snowflakes all over the sky collided with raging lightning. But what Tony Rogers couldn't believe was, the lightning summoned by Luther was actually frozen by the freezing air. The lightning that pierced the sky and the earth was frozen into ice under the surface, and it actually formed in front of his eyes. A very unbelievable picture appeared. The ground is connected to the icicles of the sky, and the naked eye can see the thick lightning flashing in it. Water? Then he is an element, and he can be frozen in substance? Tony's eyeballs are about to pop out, which is completely contrary to science. Things like thunder and lightning are simply impossible to substantiate in a certain way nowadays. Otherwise, first of all, earth-shaking changes will take place in the world's weapons and equipment. Electromagnetic weapons will become the highest technology of mankind. Rogers simply kept silent. Anyway, since he was rescued by S.H.I.E.L.D. and rescued himself from the ice, he no longer knew this world. Smiley face. Anyway, something strange happened to him in this world now. It is also acceptable. But when he caught a glimpse of Johnny and Huss, he froze for a moment. It turned out that although the freezing air storm skipped the two of them, it was still affected to a small point, that is, this small point, so that the two were frozen into ice sculptures. In particular, Huss, a fat man, also put on a strange and exaggerated pose. His eyeballs kept turning back and forth inside the ice sculpture, and he was completely full of joy. Boom, boom. With all his strength, Huss broke free from the ice sculpture, and pieces of ice splashed onto the ground. He shivered unconsciously, as if he had been frozen to death. There is a thick layer of frost on the eyebrows. Trembling, Huss reached out and took off the hat, then shook his body violently, shaking off the ice scum from his hair and body. With a face full of tears, he could be regarded as having received a disaster for no reason. He was very unhappy, but he couldn't say anything. He couldn't go to trouble that white-haired girl. It was no different from courting death. Johnny is simple. Because of the fire of hell, the ice sculpture slowly begins to melt into water. Fortunately, they were only affected by a few snowflakes. If they were in the center of the freezing air storm, the two of them would not die due to physical reasons, but it would take at least a few decades to break free. The two people affected all looked like this, which shows how bad Luther's situation is at this time. Tony looked up and saw the crystal-clear ice sculpture in front of him, as well as the frozen angel Luther inside. He slammed his mouth. This may be the most unlucky angel I've ever seen, but I have to say, what? Beautiful. For a cold-blooded angel like Luther, no matter how miserable his fate would be, he would have no mercy. Ella breathed out a breath of cold white air and looked coldly at the ice sculpture in front of her. You must be judged for those innocent lives. You will be suppressed in a world full of darkness and fear for 100,000 years, and you must repent for the blood you stained. The blood of the race cannot be shed in vain, nor can it die at the hands of these people from other worlds. Huss grinned. He was really strong. Heaven would definitely not let it go. There was a good show to watch. It was exactly as Huss said. When Ella decided to send Hood to the sanctuary and be judged by the Pope, she saw thick, dark clouds rolling over the endless sky, overwhelming the darkness. A great being is coming. Everyone looked up suddenly and saw under the sky. A pure white and holy golden door gradually emerged without a trace of dust and dirt. The door opened, and ethereal female voices prayed resounding, full of kindness and fraternity. It is like a clear spring that washes people's souls. Confusion flashed across Tony's eyes, as if he had been affected by the sound. The MK armor detected that Tony was mentally abnormal, and Jarvis' voice sounded. It is detected that the spirit is infected, and the mental screen defense device is turned on. Zila, a subtle voice sounded, and a ray of electricity passed through Tony's body, and a mental magnetic field synchronized with Tony appeared, which brought Tony back to his senses. That feeling just now is very strange. Sir, you have been affected by inexplicable mental fluctuations, and the mental defense function has been activated to dispel the influence. It's really in line with the style of these guys. A flash of anger flashed in Tony's heart, and he thought of many methods used by a certain sect to brainwash believers for their beliefs. This method is not glamorous and despicable. He turned his head and glanced at Rogers, who didn't seem to be affected. He secretly admired this man's tenacity and will. Amidst the loud, ethereal female voices praying and singing, an angel wearing exquisite armor flew out of the golden portal, accompanied by the angel guards one by one. Holding a weapon, all kinds of handsome faces are full of seriousness. Under the protection of these angels, the leading angel slowly floated down, about tens of meters above the ground, looking down on everyone with a lofty attitude. The momentum on his body is overwhelming, as if it wants to fill the world, and the whole world is his servant. This high posture made Tina, Ella, and the others look cold. The angel's voice was full of magnetism, and he said slowly, "My name is Michael, a human being, and Luther is the spokesperson of heaven. She captured the devil Kazan for heaven and fought for peace on earth, even if she killed a few people for it. Class, you are not qualified to judge her. While speaking, he stretched out his hand. Boom, on the ground, Luther, who had turned into an ice sculpture, began to slowly hang in the air. His body exuded a pure white sacred light, and the ice was slowly melting. Michael's self-righteous appearance angered Tina, Isla, and the others. The loud and clear voice resounded through the sky like thunder. Who allowed you to break into the world unscrupulously? Killing innocent lives must be judged, and whoever dares to stop them will be punished with death. Boom. I saw Tina and Ella rushing towards Michael and Luther, one in front and one behind. The rest of the saints also followed behind Tina. A few beams of light pierced the air, and Isla shot in front of Luther in the blink of an eye. Before the opponent could dissolve the ice sculpture, she raised her right leg high and hit the whip leg from top to bottom mixed with boundless terrifying power. Kicked Luther on the shoulder. Boom. Accompanied by a crisp explosion, the ice sculpture fell towards the ground like a meteorite, hitting the ground with a terrifying shock wave. Meanwhile, Tina and other saint fighters rushed in front of Michael. Facing the tall and straight figure of Michael Gundam, Tina punched out a sonic punch. Within a second, hundreds of punches of the sonic punch shone like stars blooming. This turbulent power shocked even an archangel like Michael. He held out his palms in front of him. With strange ripples, a pure white barrier with a huge phantom cross appeared in front of him. Boom, boom, boom. The storm-like sonic punch crazily slammed into the barrier. Each punch could shatter atoms, and the sonic punch fired by Tina, who was close to the seventh sense, could destroy a city with every blow. Click. Sure enough, raindrops of sonic punches punched the barrier into cracks. Finally, the barrier shattered and turned into fragments of pure white light, which were carried by the sonic dog and continued to blast towards a group of angels such as Michael. With screams, blood and wings all over the sky bloomed in the sky. In just an instant, several guardian angels were turned into flesh, and the rest of the guardian angels reacted quickly and dodged, but they were either missing arms or broken legs. Only Michael, the archangel, turned into a phantom and remained unaffected. Michael slowly turned his head to look at the tragic situation behind him. His original aloof demeanor no longer existed. Instead, it was a distorted face. The pure white light on his body kept flickering, and his eyes were full of coldness and anger. He, in the human world, was desecrated by a group of ants-like humans. Even if this group of humans possesses great power, so what? The endless years have long given him a stereotype of human beings. In his mind, human beings are just a group of pigs who dedicate their beliefs and souls to heaven. The mighty hogs are also just hogs. The meat pig dared to violate the order of heaven and even dared to shoot and kill his guardian angel. This, how can forgive? You are looking for death. Michael's angry voice rolled and echoed between the sky and the earth. The powerful sound waves shook the ground below, and the strong wind raged and howled, rolling up thousands of miles of yellow sand. Thank you, sir. And Chapter 104. Dirty Paradise. The angry Michael burst out with boundless power. Dazzling sacred light suddenly appeared in the sky, and the majestic pure white light turned into a turbulent torrent to wreak havoc. The dazzling light made Tony and others who looked up on the ground couldn't help but close their eyes. Huss and Johnny only felt that their bodies were about to be burned, especially Huss. As a hunter, he was essentially a demon. Facing the divine light erupted by Archangel Michael, the devil's physique was as fragile as a piece of wood burned by flames. Feeling that his body was going to be melted, Hussey cursed inwardly and quickly threw a black stone. The stone flew in midair, turning into a pitch-black curtain that enveloped the surroundings. Cut off the terrible divine light of Archangel Michael. Johnny also felt much better. Looking at the black stone in the sky that was engraved with dense and mysterious patterns, he asked strangely, "What is this?" "This thing I dug out of hell. It has existed for billions of years. It has been soaked in the power of all the time in the depths of hell. It also has incredible dark power. The energy in this thing is used less and less. It's gone, man. I got the bottom of the box out. You have to buy me a drink for whatever you say." Huss's fat face was full of distress. He didn't lie about 727. He didn't know how many times this stone had saved him over the years, but all of them were used at the critical moment of life and death. This time, the divine power erupted by the Archangel Michael. "I'm afraid it will consume all the dark energy in the stone." "Damn Michael," Huss cursed inwardly. He lost a lot of money, even if he caught the devil Kazan this time. So what? It can't even out his loss at all. He glanced at Tony, who stretched his hands in front of him and put down his mask, and Rogers, who put his shield in front of him. That's what makes humans so good. They won't be affected by the power of the birdmen in heaven, but they are not brainwashed. Surprisingly, these two humans seem a little different from ordinary humans. Rumble, the dazzling white light faded slowly, and Huss quickly put away the black stone. Seeing the faded lines, he almost didn't shed tears of distress. Sure enough, there was not a drop left, and it was completely useless. Damn, Michael. Huss cursed again. In the sky, the pair of huge wings behind Michael stretched out. The sacred breath made him like a god, and the surging breath shook the surrounding space. Those guardian angels who were supposed to die did not know when they recovered. Tina and the others were floating in the sky. Seeing this, they couldn't help but let out a cold snort. Michael's face was cold, and he stretched out his fingers only to Tina and the others. Blame the angels, blaspheme the gods, hinder the mission of heaven. Your souls have fallen, judge them. Bang! The guardian angels received the order without any hesitation. Their wings fluttered behind them, and they rushed towards Tina and the others with a big sword in their hands. A stream of pure white light beams instantly tore through the sky. It's really beautiful. However, Tina and the others showed no fear at all. Tina's eyes glowed red. No one is qualified to judge us except Athena. Boom! The air wave exploded violently, and the sound of the sonic boom resounded. The figures of Tina and the others instantly disappeared in place. There was a danger coming from behind. A long index finger with brightly colored nails touched the back of his heart. The angel's expression was stiff, and his eyes moved back involuntarily. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw a beautiful eye shining with red light. Boom! In the next second, a pink-purple halo exploded from the index finger, and a needle-like light beam shot out instantly. The angel's back was immediately shattered by this force, and the whole person fell obliquely towards the ground like a cannonball. The sky is splashed with countless feathers and blood. It also allowed Tony and Rogers under the ground to see the real so-called angel with broken wings. Boom, boom, boom. The guardian angel fell into the yellow sand, splashing the yellow sand all over the sky. The ground was cracked and sunken, and the air waves raged violently. Lying in the pit, a huge blood hole was pierced on the angel's chest, back, and blood spurted from the corner of his mouth. His eyes were full of pain and despair. Smiley face. He felt death, and stretched out his hand to the Archangel Michael, hoping can get the mercy and salvation of the Archangel. However, when Michael wanted to heal, it was too late. The power of a saint fighter is enough to smash atoms, and can essentially shatter the core. The short contact between Tina and the others has already recognized the particularity of the angel race, so the power is not only aimed at the physical body, but also against the body. Soul. The guardian angel's eyes lost their brilliance, and he completely lost his voice as he lay in the pit of the yellow sand. In the next second, yellow sand blew past and buried his body. Seeing their companions die so easily, the rest of the guardian angels were shocked. The original anger and pride immediately dissipated and turned into silent fear. It's not that angels can't die, it's just that for countless years, heaven is no longer the original heaven. Those noble qualities have long been corrupted, and some only have selfishness, interests, lies, and deceit. In this environment, the angels are already decayed, no different from the fallen angels, enjoying extravagance and will naturally fear death. The angels glanced at their companion who was buried in yellow sand on the ground, then turned to look at Tina, as if they were looking at a of death. Tina smiled contemptuously and didn't pay any attention to these trash. The so-called angels are advertised on the earth as the most beautiful creatures in the world, and they are also creatures that symbolize purity and holiness. It is decay and darkness. You also know to be afraid? Tina said so superiorly. That condescending attitude was just like what these angels had before. As the Archangel of Heaven, Michael is also a battle angel. Seeing the appearance of the guardian angels, the anger in his heart is beyond words. But he remained expressionless, just watching. In his heart, these guardian angels are no longer qualified to enter heaven. They should die in this place. Boom. The few saints who had disappeared had already launched an attack. The Saint of Arrows did not use the tactics of arrows to deal with these useless angels. His figure was so fast that he came behind a guardian angel almost instantly, and he stretched out his hands to grab the guard angel's body. Pure white wings. In the latter's horrified eyes, the Sagittarius Saint Seiya worked hard. The arrow Saint Seiya tore off the wings of the guardian angel with great force. Blood splashed all over the sky, and the guardian angel wailed in pain. This shrill scream seemed to symbolize the bell of death. Monsters! They are monsters! Run! Run! The faces of the guardian angels who were spreading fear were distorted, and their wings fluttered in an attempt to escape and return to heaven through the gate of the golden house. However, before they flew far, they saw the rest of the saint fighters booming, flying at high speed, and they caught up with the angels first, and their figures came to Tina in an instant and stood still. The figures of the angels behind them were frozen in midair, and in the next second, the figures finally turned into a rain of blood, accompanied by densely packed blood-stained feathers falling down. Tony and Rogers below, looking up at the blood rain and falling blood-stained feathers, looked cruel and beautiful. And those fearless and heroic figures faced the archangel full of holy light and shadow a long time ago. Time seems to be frozen at this moment. This poignant and strange picture is deeply imprinted in everyone's mind, and people will never forget it. In the sky, Tina looked at the seemingly holy Michael with disgust. The latter seemed to have seen through Tina's mind. He had already recovered his composure and shook his head with a regretful expression on his right hand. The hearts of angels are pure and fearless. Since they know what fear is, it proves that his soul has fallen. They are no longer qualified to be angels. They are just a bunch of fallen angels. They may thank you for letting them be angels who died in battle instead of going back to heaven and being judged. The filth in your heart can't be hidden even in gorgeous words and descriptions. I don't care what you want, but since you have intruded into the world without permission, you must get the trial you want. I will personally tear your wings apart, press you back to the sanctuary, and kneel before the Pope. Tina's voice became louder and louder, and her breath became more and more terrifying. Everyone's small universe was burning at this moment, and flames filled with various colors emerged on the surface around everyone, and the turbulent air flow stirred up the boundless gust of wind. The earth trembled and howled. In a trance, everyone seemed to see a great existence that could not be described in words from behind several saints, wearing white gauze, wearing a golden laurel crown, and holding a golden victory scepter, who was more powerful than Michael. Angels are still greater, deeper, and holy. If it is said that Michael only shows and maintains the gorgeous and sacred appearance of angels through power, then this great existence will be subdued even by the soul. Compared to this goddess, Michael is more like a clown in a gorgeous coat. There is no comparison at all. You guys, Michael also saw the flashing shadow of Athena, who was born unconsciously after Tina and the others burned the small universe, and his original anger didn't know when it disappeared without a trace. 5.0 He originally thought that he was a battle angel, and it was impossible for him to have so-called fear. But now he was wrong. He just saw the great phantom, and he unconsciously felt fear, and even had the idea of kneeling down and giving up the fight. At this time, Michael suddenly realized that behind the few human imps in front of him, there seemed to be an existence more powerful than the ruler of heaven, rather than the so-called mutated ability users. At this time, Michael's mentality changed. He can underestimate or even despise Tina and the others, because human beings are so powerful, it is not worth mentioning in heaven, and if they blaspheme heaven, the ending will naturally go without saying. But these people, with a powerful standing behind them, is different. Just like heaven and hell, the two are opposed to each other, but there is ulterior filth behind them, and they even coexist with each other. Doesn't heaven want to occupy hell? Make a puppet back garden of heaven? Of course I want to, but it is because there are many powerful and ancient beings in hell. The two forces may thus have friction, but they will never choose to go to war. The same is true for Tina. Michael's thoughts kept turning, and in the end, he chose to decide on peace. Chapter 105. Michael's fear. Michael is a battle angel, but at the same time he is also a high-level power in heaven. Heavenly power struggle is fierce. The ruler of heaven, Bacharel, and other archangels fight and ally each other for their own interests. It can be said that this is no different from the power struggle among human beings. If there is a difference, it is just that the interests being fought for are different. As a high-level interest, Michael could not trigger a war between forces indiscriminately. Otherwise, other archangels who coveted their own interests would definitely take this opportunity to explode, and even the ruler of heaven behind him might not be able to keep. Similar to these, Michael's attitude changed immediately. Scattering the aggressive holy light in the sky, he said gently, "This may be a misunderstanding. Luther is the spokesperson of heaven. Kazan breaks through the dimensions of and the world. Others summon demon armies to capture the world. Her purpose is also to protect the world. Peace. It's just that she is a little bit unscrupulous in order to complete the task. She should be judged. As soon as these words came out, the eyes of Tina and the others changed immediately. They didn't expect that Michael, the great angel of heaven, would be so shameless, completely ignoring the killing of those guardian angels, and even wanted to abandon Luther, who was on a mission. Luther is certainly hateful, but this Michael is even better. Heaven is here to protect peace. Since the world has its own guardian, heaven will definitely not come to the world easily. Michael ignored the expressions of several people, and after finishing speaking on his own, his figure turned into a ray of light and disappeared on the spot. The speed of running was so fast that Tina and the others did not react. When he reacted, even the golden door to heaven was closed. Losing Michael's momentum, the tumbling dark clouds in the sky slowly dissipated, and the sun once again spread across the earth. Huh, what's this? Saint Arrow's face was blank. The performance of the guardian angel and even Michael simply subverted his description of the angel in mythology. Is this really an angel? How do you feel like a bunch of bullying bastards? This paradise looks dirtier than we imagined, Tina said thoughtfully. She was keenly aware of some of Michael's thoughts. This guy seemed to sense something and changed his attitude. The person who can make an archangel fearful must be Athena behind everyone. This battle angel Michael came in real form, and his strength was very strong, even stronger than Tina and the others alone. If heaven is tough, Tina doesn't think so, but now, she has basically seen through the essence of the so-called heaven. I'll talk about it later. Tina turned her head and glanced at the Quinjet fighter plane parked in the sky in the distance, and saw Natasha and Patton in the driver's seat. His eyes fluctuated slightly, and he said slowly, "The most important thing now is to solve the matter of the Devil Kazan. Let's go. We dare to go to Dallas as soon as possible. Bart and the others should have arrived." Boom. The air wave exploded, and Tina and several other saints immediately turned into several beams of light and disappeared into the sky. All this happened too quickly. From the fact that the guardian angel was easily slaughtered, Michael ran away, and the saints left. Tony and the others below almost failed to react. Johnny suddenly realized what he was going to do at this moment. Without too much nonsense, he turned his head and glanced at the bus. The wounds of the seriously wounded inside had been repaired. Without too much nonsense, he turned around and stepped on the Harley motorcycle. With the infusion of hellfire, the ghost-faced Harley rider reappeared. Boom. The roar of the engine sounded, the tires of the locomotive spun rapidly, and with a raised head, it immediately drove along the highway to the destination Dallas. The speed is no less than the speed of sound. Along the way, a long line of fire was left on the dilapidated ground, and by the way, he passed by the Hulk, who was sent flying by Hood at the beginning. Hulk, the unlucky boy, just recovered from his nerves and got up, and was blown away again by the air waves bursting out from around the Harley motorcycle. The angry Hulk yelled at the disappearing motorcycle, wishing to smash the motorcycle to pieces. Huss glanced at Hood, who disappeared inexplicably on the ground in the distance, and then at Hulk, who was jumping and venting farther away. After hesitating for a while, he still got into his convertible car and faced Tony, and Rogers yelled, "Hey, buddy, do you want to join in the fun? Do you think you can complete the work in front of those saints?" Tony raised his eyebrows. He thought this guy wouldn't give up and was going to pick up the leak. However, Huss quickly waved his hand. "Wow, I'm just here to have fun. If I can help, I don't mind at all." After speaking, he patted the dark car door again and extended an invitation to the two of them. "Do you want to try the convertible from hell? Your car looks so chic. I don't need it." Tony praised perfunctorily and then declined. Smiley face. If he could, he would really like to give it a try, but the MK armor was damaged, so he needed to use tools to repair it on the Quinjet fighter. Captain Rogers hesitated for a moment and glanced at the bus in the distance. Tony knew what he thought of Rogers and said, "Don't worry. Jarvis said that the rescue medical helicopter and the car will arrive in about 3 minutes, and the group of children have already cured the injured." As he spoke, he made a special wink, and there was another layer of meaning in his words, which Rogers could hear. He nodded, walked to the co-pilot, opened the door, and sat in the dark driver's seat. "Dude, sit tight." Huss was delighted to have someone special get into his precious convertible, put on the round cap, and hit the gas with a groan. Bang! A ray of black breath appeared from the driving dashboard, and the convertible car floated more than 10 centimeters from the ground. A big puff of smoke was emitted from the exhaust pipe, and the car rushed out like an arrow. Its speed is not inferior to the locomotive driven by Ghost Rider Johnny. But the strange thing is that Rogers, the co-pilot, did not feel the strong wind resistance. He also realized that this is obviously one of the capabilities of this convertible. Natasha, I need your help. There are repair tools in the fighter plane that can repair your armor, but I don't want this fighter plane to be dismantled by Hulk. If I steal from S.H.I.E.L.D. for the second time, I believe Nick Fury will definitely throw me into jail. Huh, how much is a plane? Do I mean that? The Gustav Building in Dallas. It was originally a building built by the oil giant Gustav. It was extraordinarily luxurious. Although it was not located in the center of the city, it was not particularly remote. However, it was such a building, but at this moment, its interior was already filled with evil and terrifying existences. I saw that on the basement floor of the building, the entire empty area was extremely dark. Sitting in a wheelchair, a fat man in a suit with big ears was pushed by a beautiful female secretary to a huge and empty room. It was said to be a room, but it was actually a huge cave. Under the room, at a height of tens of meters, the female secretary pushed the chubby man along the road to the edge of the cliff, looking down. Just below, there is a huge machine. The bottom of the machine is a huge drill bit, which is drilling the ground. At this time, the ground is split into pieces, and there are thick smoke and sparks in the cracks. The red flames are vaguely. You can also see another world of purgatory from the crack. That world is called Hell. In the air parallel to the cliff, a figure shrouded in thick black smoke murmured and laughed, as if expecting something. Great Lord Kazan, we are about to succeed. Seeing that figure, the fat man kept trembling and shouted excitedly. The female secretary behind her looked numb, and her beautiful eyes were full of helplessness. She didn't want to see such a scene, but there was nothing she could do. A hoarse and thick voice came from the black shadow. When the drill bit of the cursed power breaks through the barrier between the world and hell, then you will receive my reward, eternal life, and a healthy body. The fat man was even more excited when he heard this. His name is Gustav, and he is the oil tycoon. A few years ago, in a car accident, he lost both his legs and his healthy body. No matter how much money he had, he couldn't get his whole body back. He discovered by accident that he knew the existence of the demon king Kazan, and even got the spell to summon Kazan's black magic book. He believed in Kazan and uttered the magic spell to summon Kazan. Unexpectedly, he got a response. Kazan made a condition that Gustav could not refuse. He used his own money to build a drill machine and sacrificed more than a dozen employees of the building at the same time, so that Kazan got his body. The devil Kazan wants to summon countless demons to get to the world. Gustav didn't care at all. His personality was tyrannical and cold-blooded. He didn't care if the world turned into purgatory. He needed a healthy body and eternal life. Even if the price is to make the earth become the devil's backyard, he is going to succeed. Immediately he will have everything he wants, Gustav laughed. But he never knew that everything he wanted was just a huge conspiracy. And this conspiracy will also make him despair. Pacha, at this time, the drill bit cursed by the Demon King finally pierced through the barrier between the world and hell, and a huge hole was drilled out of the barrier. In an instant, boundless and terrifying flames shot out from the hole, zhao liao zhao, completely destroying the underground ground, turned into a sea of fire. The drill machine, in the flames of hell, was preserved because of Kazan's power, and it was safe and sound. After Lord Kazan, the devil, summoned us, the world. This is the world. I smell fresh and delicious flesh and blood. I smell delicious soul. Jia, great demon Lord Kazan. We will answer your call and rule the world. Evil, manic laughter came from the sea of flames, and harsh and violent voices filled the entire building. But the busy staff in the building raised their heads in surprise, not knowing where the voice came from. But in everyone's heart, fear can't help but grow. It seems that the doom of death is about to come. Just as the devil Kazan and Guslav were excited, hundreds of demons emerged from the sea of flames below, flapping their wings, covering the sky and covering the sun, hovering in the space above the cave like dark clouds. Kazan stretched out his hands as if declaring and issued his own order. Go and enjoy your food and enjoy your soul. Roar, the demons like such orders, and the evil faces are exposed with a cruel expression. His mouth protruded densely with sharp teeth full of saliva. His eyes have turned into a greedy red light. Chapter 106. Eyes kill people. The wings of the devil fluttered, and at the same time those terrifying eyes were on Gustav and the female secretary. Seeing such a scene, The female secretary almost fainted from fright. With a pale complexion, he couldn't help but take a few steps back, and because of the ground of the high heels, he fell directly to the ground. However, just this moment, like a signal, countless demons swooped down and turned into dark clouds towards the female secretary and Guslov. For some reason, Demon King Kazan didn't stop him at all. Seeing this, Guslov immediately screamed in fear. "Damn it, I let you out. Get thee out, Lord Kazan." But the Demon King Kazan remained silent, allowing the group of demons to stretch out their sharp claws to think of Guslov and the female secretary. At this critical moment, at the last moment when a devil's claw was about to tear the female secretary apart, boom, there was a huge roar accompanied by the shaking of the earth, and on the ceiling of the cave, a figure of divine soldiers entwined with emerald green light descended from the sky, falling like a meteorite. In an instant, all the demons along the way were hit and screamed. A cloud of black gas died. Bang, the figure fell behind the female secretary. The huge force shook the cliff under her feet, and the emerald green light suddenly appeared. Under the terrified eyes of the female secretary, a thick arm stretched out and grabbed the demon like iron tongs' paws. The devil never expected that someone would stop him from enjoying fresh and delicious food at the last moment. After being surprised, the devil became angry, his eyes were cruel, and he waved his other paw, trying to tear the guy who blocked him to pieces. But just as he stretched out his hand, there was a sharp pain in the demon's arm. When he fixed his eyes, he saw that his claws were broken by that hand, and before he could scream, that hand turned into a fist and hit his chest heavily. Boom 743. The huge force produced a turbulent torrent that washed everything around it, pierced through the demon's chest, and blasted all the demons along the way. In the end, the terrifying turbulent airflow hit the opposite mountain wall, causing the whole building and cave to shake even more violently. The sudden change, whether it was the female secretary, Guslov, or the devil Kazan, was shocked. At this time, the female secretary's face was extremely complicated. She was excited, thankful, and afraid, but she was still grateful in the end. She was grateful that the visitor had saved her from the imminent death situation. The female secretary sat on the ground and looked up. Looking up, from the angle of view, I saw a very burly and strong abdominal muscle, and a resolute face, not to mention that kind of handsome, but very masculine. The man was wearing a red coat and white lining, sweatpants and white sail shoes. He was scanning the structure of the cave and the huge drill when he suddenly noticed the gaze of the female secretary. He slowly lowered his head and saw the female secretary with an indecent posture on the ground frowned. "Are you okay?" I'm fine." Feeling the oppressive gaze, the female secretary blushed unconsciously, shook her head quickly, got up from the ground, and stood beside the man, as if this made her feel safe. He whispered, "Thank you for saving me." "You're welcome. I hope you didn't make these things, otherwise, even if I save you, you still won't be able to escape being judged by the sanctuary." The one who said it was Bart who came from the sanctuary. The female secretary quickly shook her head. "This is all caused by Guslov. He sacrificed his companion to summon Kazan, the Demon King, and tried to use a drill to summon more demons. I don't want to help, but he threatened me with my family." "That's the fat guy?" Bart looked at Guslov, who was sitting in a wheelchair less than 2 meters away.
"Yes."
"Hey kid. Kfa, who are you?" "Forget it. No matter who you are, as long as you get me out, I can give you." When Guslov saw Bart at this time, he was overjoyed at first, and then tried to get Bart to save him with his usual haughty tone. But before he finished speaking, Bart glared at him. A terrifying shock wave burst out from the eyes. Seeing that Guslov was instantly bombarded by the turbulent shock wave, the whole person, together with the chair, turned into ashes and flew down the cliff profusely, before being engulfed by the flames of hell. "Quacking rubbish." Bart spat in disdain. What kind of nongshet is it that can do such a stupid thing? Anyway, for Bart, it is better to kill such garbage as soon as possible, especially the ugly and fat face, which makes him want to vomit. The female secretary was frightened by Bart's decisive attitude, and she covered her mouth and dared not speak. After killing Guslov, Bart looked at the cloud of black air floating in the distance. A green light flashed in his eyes and asked strangely, "This is the devil Kazan?" "Yes, he is Guthra 1 equals plus 0 asterisk equals and 5 Gia, the devil Kazan summoned by husband." "That's not right." Bart ignored the demons in the sky who were cowering and dared not come down, raised his hand and touched his chin, wondering, why is the devil king so virtuous? After muttering something to himself, he took 2 steps forward and said loudly, "Hey, what are you?" Ha. *4$2 star. Oh, is it really okay to talk to a demon king like this? The female secretary trembled and looked up at Bart's back. It's terrible that this man dared to speak in such a tone to a demon king from hell. It really makes people feel safe. The female secretary's cheeks flushed brighter, and the devil Kazan, who was shouted by Bart with a puzzled and contemptuous look, said slowly at this time, "Who are you, human?" "My uncle is a Taurus saint, Bart." "What are you?" "You are a demon king. No matter how weak you are better than that bunch of trash in the sky. You are much worse than Mephisto," Bart said carelessly. But these words almost didn't scare the guy who called himself the devil Kazan. Mephisto? The thick black smoke fluctuated and rolled to show his inner unease at this time. He continued to cover up and asked, "Have you seen Mephisto, the Lord of Hell?" "I have seen it, but I have seen it too much. I have fought against that guy several times. Although I didn't win, the next time I break through to the seventh sense, I will go to and beat that hard."
Stop.
When Bart talked about Mephisto, he instinctively showed a resentful expression. But these words made Demon King Kazan even more afraid. In the black mist, he made a gesture and swallowed, and wanted to say something, but Bart was already impatient, because he had already noticed that the hole in the barrier between the world and drilled by the drill under the cliff was getting bigger and bigger. "It doesn't matter what you are, it's right to kill you anyway. After I kill you, I'm going to deal with that drill bit." Smiley face. Bart's legs squatted slightly, his right hand was fisted at his waist, his left hand was stretched forward, and the battle was naturally clear. Boom, the small universe in the body has already burned, and the emerald green flame slowly emerges, accompanied by the terrifying aura that is soaring rapidly. The entire cliff and cave are shaken violently due to the impact, and there is an incomparably turbulent explosion centered on Bart. Air currents raged in all directions. The demons above the cave curled up in fear. If they could, they would like to return to right now. Too scared of demons like this. That human being is simply a monster. Not to mention that the guy said he had fought with Mephisto several times, and even uttered wild words that he would go to hell, but the aura emanating from the human made the demons no doubt at all. This is simply a terrifying existence comparable to the demon king Mephisto. "Master Kazan, come on, kill that human. Lord Kazan." Lord Kazan is invincible. These demons haven't released yet, abandoning this beautiful world. Put all hopes on the devil Kazan, cheering for him one after another. But hearing this sound of encouragement, Demon King Kazan almost cried. "Are you kidding me? My family knows about my own affairs. If he is really the devil, he would have already ruled in hell, and why did he come to the world to do this? Damn Malachi, you killed me." Demon King Kazan scolded his brother in his heart. Boom. But no matter what Kazan's inner activities were like, how scared he was, Bart still broke out his strength in a serious manner, bursting the air waves dully, and Bart punched the devil Kazan. In an instant, he saw the same light and shadow emerge from Bart's body and appeared in front of him. The next second, the light and shadow exploded and turned into meteors, which poured out towards the devil Kazan like a rainstorm. In desperation, the latter was swallowed up by Bart's sonic punch. Boom, boom, boom. The huge explosion flames raged in all directions, and the raging energy instantly wiped out the entire cave, including the demons above the cave. The cave collapsed, and the ancient Slavic building above could not bear this force. The emerald green energy and the red flame intertwined and turned into a beam of light that engulfed the building, and the beam of light shot straight into the sky, connecting the sky and the earth. This unbelievable sight and explosion immediately attracted the attention of people around the building. Everyone raised their heads and looked in the direction of the Gustloff building. Their eyes widened. "Walter? What's that? What is that oil guy Gustloff doing? Did the oil guy develop any terrible weapons? How do I remember that the oil guy doesn't seem to be engaged in the military industry? Maybe Tony Stark gave up the military industry and let that Gustloff want a piece of the pie?" People are pointing and talking. Dallas is the city with the most serious racial discrimination in the United States. Many people look down on Gustloff, a person of Eastern European descent. Even if he is rich, many people call him an oil guy. Among people's ridicule, the beam of light finally dissipated, and to the surprise and shock of many people, the ancient Slavic building had been moved to the ground. Outside the building, hundreds of building employees stared blankly at the scorched ground. It is completely unbelievable that a few seconds ago, there was a building standing here. Most importantly, Aren't they in the building? When did you come outside? And the instigator was on a street lamp in the distance. Elvis frowned and felt the strong breath of coming from the red pit on the abandoned ground. Did Bart fight the devil? Why didn't he feel the devil's aura at all? Rumble. Thunder exploded in the sky, and a flash of lightning flashed, waving Thor's hammer around the lightning, and Thor in armor fell on the road not far away, scaring the pedestrians on the side of the road. Ignoring pedestrians pointing and pointing, Saul raised his head excitedly and looked up at Elvis standing on top of the street lamp. Hey, brother, where is the devil? My sledgehammer is already hungry and thirsty. Soul, the demon king you were looking forward to may be gone. Chapter 107. Reaching heaven, huh? What do you mean? Soul's originally excited expression immediately changed. He just heard that there was going to be a demon king on the earth, so he immediately followed him. Ready to fight hard? No, it was to protect the peace of the earth. Now Elvis said that the devil is gone? Then why is he here? No, see for yourself. Elvis seemed to have a strange expression, pouted his mouth and signaled. Soul didn't quite understand, and followed his line of sight to look into the deep pit ahead. Among the hot smoke and red light, 3 figures slowly floated up from it. Bart pulled a beautiful human lady wearing glasses. The other one is the soul body emitting a faint white light. Wearing armor, with a pair of pure white wings on the back, this is a male angel. It's just that the figure of the soul body is a little dim. Obviously, it has encountered some kind of force blow. Saul frowned and stared at the angel soul body, uncertain. What kind of devil is this guy, Kazan? It should be him. With Elvis's response, Thorburn's brain, which is not smart enough, is like a paste. What does this mean? Didn't it mean that the devil Kazan wants to break the dimension between and the world, summoning demons to rule the earth? Why did the devil turn into an angel? Something is wrong, but I can't figure it out. Soul, who couldn't figure it out, simply didn't bother to think about it, and said loudly to Bart, Bart, what's going on? Bart flicked the female secretary casually, and with gentle strength, threw her onto the road far away without causing any injuries. He shook his head, rather speechless, and pointed at the male angel. He was originally a fallen angel in hell, and he was a brother with another angel in heaven. The two colluded and exchanged information to gain benefits and status. But because in heaven have noticed, in order to solve this matter, this drama was created. The ins and outs were very simple, and Soul understood it, and immediately became in the same mood as Bart and Elvis. How should I put it? For a descendant of a like soul, who has a high status, he will not understand the troubles of the two lower classes at all. He has no idea about his status, because his status is in Asgard itself, is high enough. Angel brothers are different. They are the bottom class in heaven. They need to climb up step by step to gain status and benefits. But greed still made the two brothers' ambitions and appetites grow, and they were still noticed after all. What should we do now? Whether they belong to heaven or hell, if they cause trouble in the world, they must be judged for their actions. I will take him back to the sanctuary. As for the other angel, I believe that heaven must also hand over to people, otherwise. Speaking of this, Bart sneered. Otherwise, do you really think that His Excellency the Pope has a good temper? Leave first. There's too much commotion here. Bart glanced at the distance, excitedly taking pictures and shouting to more and more people. Soul and Elvis were not talking nonsense. Elvis started the teleportation, and a dazzling beam of light fell out of thin air from the sky, covering the two of them. In the next second, the two were engulfed by the beam of light and disappeared in place. As for Bart, he looked down at the cursed drilling machine below, and the crack in the two worlds that had been drilled out of the hole, and twisted his neck. Fortunately, the gap is not too big, and I can solve it alone. Ong, his eyes shone with emerald green brilliance. The small universe was burning violently. Majestic and magnificent power erupted from his body, and the turbulent air flow was blowing in all directions centered on him. Bart yelled loudly. His figure curled up slightly in midair, and then punched suddenly at the pothole below. Boom! In an instant, a phantom wearing a golden holy garment appeared in front of him, and in the next second, it turned into a mass of terrifying golden bull heads with huge horns and rushed towards the ground. A shocking explosion resounded through the sky, shaking the whole city violently. I saw a terrifying torrent of energy pouring out of the deep pit and rolling back into the sky, and Bart's figure didn't get into the torrent, and he completely lost his figure. People from all directions were caught off guard by the shock and fell to the ground. The turbulent airflow was like a strong wind, and everyone who was blowing could only use their hands to block their bodies. Under the arms, they couldn't open their eyes. The terrible vision lasted for a long time before slowly calm. When everything subsided, people got up from the ground in a daze. The original Gustav building was leveled, and the original land was turned into a bottomless pit. A few people who were brave enough tremblingly explored the direction of the deep pit and came to the edge to look down. Under the sunlight, a deep pit of tens of meters was exposed, and there was only soil in it. The farce of the so-called Demon King Kazan, heaven, hell, and sanctuary are already well aware of it. Only the human countries are confused, especially for the US government. Fortunately, the Avengers such as Tony and Rogers have communicated with Johnny, and the generous narration of the Hunter Huss also made them clear about this thing. Through the medium of Nick Fury of S.H.I.E.L.D., the government can understand the ins and outs. While letting out a sigh of relief, it also caused a headache. This incident made the higher-ups aware that the various forces in this world are becoming more and more complicated. The sanctuary that originally appeared, hell, now has a paradise. And Soul's short-lived appearance, through the clothes on his body and the hammer he was carrying, he probably guessed the identity of this person. Thor, the Norse mythology obviously does exist. The races and the myths of all parties appear one by one, and the pressure on the top government is increasing. This incident is even more revealing. The struggle between and heaven is only because of the collusion between the two lowest classes. It even spread to the world. So what if it's in heaven's higher powers fighting? What kind of disaster would that bring? Humans simply cannot bear it. Fortunately, it is not hopeless. At least the earth is still protected by the sanctuary. The saints acted vigorously and dared to fight against heaven without any scruples. In the end, Michael, the battle angel of heaven, retreated. It can be seen that the sanctuary is also strong enough. At least in a short period of time, the earth will not be affected by fighting for no reason. As for Tony and others forming an Avengers team that specializes in dealing with supernatural events, it also brings new ideas to countries. Recruiting those powerful people with strange abilities to form a team, not to mention that it can completely solve it, but at least they must have a guarding force that can contend. As a result, there are people with various abilities on the earth today who have somehow begun to be recruited. Even mutants who were originally in an embarrassing position were now given preferential treatment, just when the earth is gradually raising superpower teams. As for the source of the incident, the angel Malachi, the situation is not good at this time. Heaven, a vast expanse of whiteness, white clouds all over the sky. Any beauty in the world that is enough to praise fantasy with words can be reflected here. Mountains, rivers, trees, and vegetation are all covered by white clouds. And there are beautiful angels with pure white wings wrapped in gauze mist. And there are also handsome and elegant male angels. And that cute baby angel with little wings. Smiley face. And floating in the sky, the most gorgeous, the greatest and most sacred main hall. The crystal clear enough to reflect the shadows of the ground. The crystal walls are brilliant, and the hall is full of rows of angel warriors in armor. In the midair of the temple, a group of angels were also flying and floating. At the front end below, Malachi was stripped of his armor and knelt on the ground with his upper body bare, his face ashen. Archangel Michael, Baikali, and a group of high-level angels stood at the left and right ends, looking indifferently at Malachi, the trash who deceived heaven. For them, this person is about to be judged and endure endless pain and torture. Die? For Malachi it was all relief. Great Lord, please, please forgive my sins. Malachi raised his head and looked at the old man in a white robe and long white beard at the front, begging. Malachi, you have sold your soul to the devil. You have betrayed the light, you stupid Bible-reading scum. The old man's face was full of kindness, but what he said made Malachi despair. He understood that everything he had was over. Malachi, because of your stupidity and greed, the Archangel Luther of heaven was arrested, even caused the death of a dozen guardian angels, and you couldn't be relieved, and even colluded with to sell the interests of heaven. You will be punished for your actions, pay the price, and I will sentence you in the name of heaven. While the old man was speaking, the final judgment was about to be issued. The rest of the angels watched silently with cold eyes, and even many naked female angels showed mocking smiles. Here, Malachi is like the bottom scum, and torturing him is just giving all the angels some fun. It was at Malachi's most desperate moment. Suddenly, a voice interrupted the final judgment of the ruler of heaven named God. I think you need to hand him over to sanctuary for trial. Boom, the majestic breath swept across the entire heaven, and the raging monstrous waves blew away all the surrounding clouds, shaking the entire heaven. The sudden arrival surprised God and even all the angels. Who dare to invade heaven? The battle angel Michael said angrily. The divine light burst out from his body, but the dazzling golden light spread all over, but was forced back by a stronger and more ferocious, terrifying force. A will revived like an ancient god, and the sonorous killing breath swept across. Everyone is under this breath, and even their souls seem to be trembling. Fear, involuntarily diffused. Who is it? How could it bring such fear to all their angels? This thought flashed through the minds of all angels regardless of gender. Only God, those seemingly benevolent eyes, bloomed bright golden, and the terrible and heavy pressure slowly permeated from his body, and his eyes looked forward. The angels realized that this God was angry. Following his line of sight, the angels turned and looked back. At some point, near the gate of the main hall, a figure in black and gold and gorgeous clothes and a hood appeared. There is also a gold necklace around the neck. Under the brim of the hat, one can vaguely see a beautiful face. That kind of beauty is more attractive than any female angel present, especially the tear mole under the corner of the eye, which is infinitely magnified. But such a beautiful woman is filled with a boundless and terrifying aura. It was she who made the entire heaven shake. Who are you? Why did you break into heaven? God stared at this figure and spoke slowly. My name is Kyle, the Pope of the Sanctuary. Malachi caused turmoil in the world for his own self-interest, and he deserves to be judged by the sanctuary. I want to finish the old book. There may not be many updates in these 2 days. And Chapter 108. I gave you a chance, sanctuary. God leaves no trace. He glanced at the battle angel Michael, apparently from his mouth before knowing what happened in the world and the power of the sanctuary. But the sanctuary is simply a mystery to heaven, and no one knows the depth. God also only paid a little attention to it, but did not pay special attention to it. But now, I didn't expect that the other party would go directly to heaven and rob people with a strong stance. This is unacceptable to everyone in heaven, including God. Even if he is a selfish person and a conspirator, he is still the ruler of heaven. No matter how dirty he is secretly, he still needs to maintain the face of heaven on the surface. Just letting the other party Malachi away with a high profile, this is undoubtedly a direct blow to heaven. God absolutely does not allow this kind of thing to happen. The holy, pure white light exploded, and in a trance, the loud and clear singing of the church came from heaven, accompanied by his majestic and solemn breath, breaking through the 4 directions, countering Kyle's ferocious momentum. The collision of the 2 auras caused the entire heaven to become turbulent. Terrifying torrents raged one after another, even blowing away the ceiling of the entire hall and some angels in midair. The rest of the angels used their power to resist the aftermath of the collision between God and the Pope. As a sinner in heaven, Malachi is using his position for personal gain. He should be judged by heaven. He doesn't need to hand it over to anyone. The white wings are as majestic as a prison, showing their majesty. However, Kyle didn't take this kind of thing at all. She broke into heaven just to confirm a conjecture in her heart. Malachi was nothing more than an excuse. Now, seeing the so-called God in front of her eyes, the conjecture in her heart was basically confirmed. There is indeed a God in this universe, or the creation who created this universe. His name is Jehovah, and he created heaven and the race of angels. But the so-called God in front of him is not Yahweh at all. Although his strength is powerful, he definitely has not reached the level of a single player. Even worse than Odin, otherwise, it would be impossible for Odin to directly expel this world from the world tree because of ambition. In a sense, that Jehovah would have long since cared about this heaven. Kyle doesn't like the atmosphere here very much. Under the glamorous and sacred appearance, there are boundless desires and filth. Every seemingly holy angel and beautiful female angel has an extremely dirty heart and soul. Especially the so-called God in front of him is worse than Mephisto. Kyle has never had a good face when dealing with such a person. She kept a cold tone and said, I don't care if he is from heaven or not. The goddess said that the duty of the sanctuary is to protect the earth. He disrupted the order of the earth, trying to summon demons and make the world suffer. He must accept the judgment of the sanctuary. If you don't hand it over, then war, boom. Every word is filled with boundless and mighty power. Like the of death ringing the bell, the war has already begun. In the body, the small universe with complete 7th sense ignited violently, and the dazzling golden flame burned from the surface of the body. Kyle held up his right hand wrapped around the bead chain, and the surface of his body had turned into a starry sky, as if this body was the vast and boundless universe. rumble on the sky of heaven, surrounded by terrifying and dense clouds. It turned into a huge vortex and spun wildly. The wind raged, roaring and destroying everything in heaven, and the originally gorgeous and sacred world of heaven ushered in the end. Terrifying thunderclaps exploded, and the 10,000 thunderbolts symbolizing death were constantly intertwined in the thick clouds, and the silver snakes danced wildly, blooming like iron trees and silver flowers. The powerful power that surpassed everything caused all the angels to involuntarily breed fear in their hearts. All the angels looked at the intruder who broke into heaven in disbelief. No one thought that the so-called sanctuary pope would have such great power. Even the bodies of the archangels of heaven trembled involuntarily, especially Michael, who now only feels fortunate that he chose to retreat wisely when he was in the world, instead of choosing to entangle with those human fighters who claimed to be saints. Otherwise, facing such a terrifying existence alone, he can only die. The ruler of the heaven, the nominal god, already had a turbulent heart, and he found that things were moving in an unexpected direction. He originally thought that the Pope in this sanctuary had the same level of strength as him at most. As long as he shows the tough posture of heaven, as long as the other party is not stupid, he will definitely back down. But he was wrong. He only realized now that the other party showed a strength far beyond his own, and he even sensed death from the female Pope. God's solemn eyes reflected Kyle's body that had turned into a starry sky, deep, vast, and immeasurable. The idea of compromise had already arisen in his heart. In the face of the difference in absolute strength, he is no longer thinking about the face of the so-called heaven, but how to ensure the resolution of this crisis in the most correct and simple way. But no matter what, riding a tiger is hard to get off. Even if he wants to compromise, he must first show the strength that can make the other party think that he can compromise. Otherwise, the Pope will definitely use a higher attitude to make the majesty of heaven sweep to the ground. After making up his mind, the majesty of God became stronger and stronger. Even in the face of Kyle, who was as powerful as the supreme God's mansion, he did not show the slightest fear. The earth-shattering thunder was brewing, and Kyle snapped his fingers with his jade hand raised high. It was this snapping of fingers that triggered a thunderbolt that destroyed everything. Rumble, crackling, and monstrous lightnings are constantly falling from the sky, and each lightning bolt has the terrifying power to destroy a planet. Dense lightning, constantly falling on the world of heaven, instantly caused the heaven to be built in pieces, and all the angels suffered a fatal blow. The gorgeous and majestic buildings of the heaven, floating above the sky, were destroyed in an instant. Hundreds of thousands individual, tens of thousands of angels were engulfed by the thunder without even screaming, and died. Kyle's coldness and ruthlessness are fully demonstrated at this moment. The heaven is howling. The air is full of boundless ripples and fluctuations. The angels spread their wings and keep fleeing from the sea of death, but angels still fall every minute and every second. The screams rang out in my ears, and God's eyes were filled with wet and hypocritical tears. Destruction, death is only a bumpy road to the light. The soul will be forgiven, and the light will never be extinguished. Angels are more like warriors. Like warriors, they deal with strong enemies, shout loudly, and attack enemies. A solemn prayer resounds through heaven. God's guidance, let the angels who breed fear be soothed. The angels forget their fear, forget everything. Smile on their faces, not afraid of death, not afraid of the thunder that can destroy their bodies and souls. Everyone knelt down on the ground, in the clouds, and offered their beliefs and souls to God in the temple of heaven. Brilliant light particles gathered towards God like an ocean. In the sky above God, a huge barrier of light was formed, blocking the baptism of thunder. The barrier seemed weak, but it was extremely solid. Smiley face. The thunder of death kept bombarding the barrier, and it could only splash wisps of ripples, which was unbreakable. Kyle's eyelids blinked slightly, and he stared at the benevolent and kind old man in front of him. I have to admit that in terms of brainwashing and playing with the soul, the devil is not as good as these guys. Absorb the souls and beliefs of the other angels, and turn them into your own power to strike at the enemy without any damage to yourself. Just relying on energy consumption can kill the opponent. Well, Kyle is fundamentally different. You must know that she is essentially a real main god. Even if this main has no power to respond, her divine power quality far exceeds that of the Heavenly Father, or even the individual level. With cold eyes, standing on the ground of the hall, slightly looking up at God on the high platform. She didn't want to be entangled with this hypocritical, disgusting guy. Ong, under the brim of the hat, A golden halo shattered those beautiful eyes, the mysterious pattern looming. The hem of the Pope's robe on his body was constantly swinging, and the bead chain in his hand was faintly ringing. The world suddenly changed color. The entire heaven disappeared in an instant, and this world has turned into a starry sky, dark, vast, and the stars are shining. Everyone is in this starry sky, and the suffocating power overwhelmingly presses on all the angels, making them unable to move. The dazzling Milky Way flows around Kyle, and the stars are shining with light that symbolizes destruction. Bright, gorgeous, beautiful. Every time the stars shine, the huge pressure on all the angels will be even stronger. No one can escape, and even the thinking seems to be frozen at this moment. Archangel Michael, Michael, and other angels seem to feel that their bodies were falling continuously, as if they were going to fall into the space without any concept. These archangels tried to struggle, but they were horrified to find that their bodies and strength were no longer under their control. They are like puppets waiting to die one by one. They can only watch their bodies slowly dissolve as they fall. Kyle stretched out her palm and slowly clenched her fist. In the palm of her hand, the shrunken figures of all the angels were looming, as if the starry sky world was being held in her palm, including the old man named God. Boom, 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 boom. In the eyes of God, there is no hypocritical benevolence, but panic. He saw Kyle's palm gradually clenched into a 5.0 fist. The blood rained all over the sky, with blood-stained wings, merged with this starry sky. Damn, what kind of power is this? This is a god. In the true sense, the supreme and great God's mansion possesses such power. Why did it appear on such a person? The old man looked at Kyle's indifferent eyes. In a daze, he seemed to see a noble and great goddess watching him, full of ruthlessness and indifference. He felt that his soul had sunk, that the power he was proud of, his divine right, was being lost bit by bit, as if being ruthlessly deprived of it by the supreme goddess. No, he must not lose his power. He must not lose his position. He no longer cares about the face of heaven. What majesty! Stop! I'll hand Malachi over to you. God has completely abandoned his previous posture. He was full of embarrassment and yelled at Kyle at the top of his lungs. But what he got was Kyle's indifferent voice. I have already given you a chance. Your determination and attitude started the war. Only death can bring the war to an end. Boom. Chapter 109. Slaughter paradise under the vast starry sky. Even being as strong as God cannot survive at all. I saw that the whole body of God was like a melting wax figure, slowly dissolving. Under the unbelievable eyes of all the angels, the God who ruled and ruled the heaven for countless years just disappeared out of thin air. God, on the other hand, has no ability to struggle and resist at all. This is impossible. Battle Angel Michael completely lost his original graceful posture and shouted in despair. The rest of the archangels also had the same expressions. That is God, the master who rules heaven, and the existence that makes countless angels submit to their faith. And the most powerful angel, even Michael, who is a battle angel, can only offer his loyalty because he knows very well how far the gap between him and God is. However, such an existence was killed in front of him without any power to fight back. How incredible this is! It can be said that at this moment, the worldview and beliefs of all the angels have collapsed. Malachi knelt on the ground, and the entire 16 people were trembling even more. If he hadn't lacked human physique, he might have been covered in cold sweat by now. Obviously, he has reached the extreme of despair, but the extreme of despair is madness. He watched the ruler die because of himself and laughed wildly. Ha ha ha, that's right, that's right. How can you be high and noble? After all, you are just like me, just a group of ants that will be killed. In front of the real gods, you are the same as those fragile humans. Even if I am judged, you will be buried with me. Malachi, he might regret his greed, but it was more to relieve his anger. How can God? Isn't he the same as the bottom self? Let others slaughter him? At this time, Michael and other angels are full of resentment towards Malachi. Without him, how could it be possible to attract such a terrifying existence to attack heaven? Nowadays, a humble angel like an ant dares to sarcastically and clamor. They could not wait to tear his body apart and send him to suffer the cruelest torture. However, how they hate. It is impossible to do it at this time. Kyle ignored the angels in front of him in the vast starry sky. Angels died one by one, and the corpses of angels floated in the starry sky. They survived by luck, and have not yet met the death angels. There are no words. Regret? Fear? Resentment? Maybe both. They knew that next, all angels would become corpses in the starry sky, just like these dead angels. Even God and several archangels cannot escape the fate of death. How can they escape? But exactly, just when the living angels thought they were bound to die, their eyes suddenly lit up, and the vast starry sky symbolizing death disappeared, and all of them returned to the hall of heaven, and the terrifying aura suppressed on their bodies. That kind of the power of suffocation dissipated just like that. The living angels looked at Kyle in disbelief. Why? Why would this horrible woman let them go? There is no reason for this at all? If the status of the two parties is exchanged, since God has been killed, it must be impossible to keep alive. Under the grateful and confused eyes of all the angels, Kyle stepped forward. Ong, the golden ripples exploded, and in the next second, she and Malachi, who was kneeling on the ground, completely disappeared in the heaven hall. In an instant, all the fluctuations calmed down quietly. The tumbling and raging, terrifying thunder in the sky dispersed and returned to the original appearance of heaven. It's just that the current heaven is full of devastation. As far as the eye can see, the floating temples are in dilapidated condition, countless angel corpses are scattered all over the place, and there are even dull roars echoing in the ears, which is the complete collapse of the temples. The sound of disintegration. In the hall, Michael, Bajali, and other archangels who survived by chance stared blankly at the corpses of angels everywhere in front of them, and the wailing echoed in my ears. It was like a nightmare. The originally resplendent and sacred hall was almost turned into ruins, but Michael and the others were not paying attention at all at this time. They were just wondering, why did that terrible pope let them go? For Malachi, a lowly angel, slaughtered heaven, even killed God and a group of archangels. But there are still some angels left behind. This seems to be intentional. The reason was thought-provoking, but everyone couldn't figure out what the pope was doing. After thinking for a while, Michael and Bacardi suddenly looked at each other. God froze slightly. They realized something at the same time. God, the ruler of heaven, has fallen, which means that the supreme position in heaven is now vacant. Just ask, who doesn't want to be the next master of heaven? As for the death of God, as for the pope from the sanctuary, there were countless deaths and injuries in heaven, and Michael and other angels didn't care at all. In the eyes of everyone 743, there were flames, and then, a new storm of power struggle was about to roll up. Outside the ward of the Texas hospital, Tony, Rogers, the Avengers, Johnny, who had turned back into a human form, and Huss, the hunter, looked at Rosie, who was getting weaker and weaker on the sickbed. At this time, the ward was empty, and all the doctors were called away by Tony. Johnny stared at Huss, a big fat man, and said in a concentrated voice, "You can really do it?" After the Dallas time was resolved, everyone learned about this and returned to Texas in a Quinjet fighter jet. Hellhunter Huss did not know why and asked to go back with them. After Tony and Captain Rogers thought and discussed, they brought the fat man up. On the way, Johnny was full of sorrow. Originally, he wanted to make friends with Ghost Rider and asked. After learning about Rosie and Malachi, he immediately volunteered and patted his chest, saying that Rosie's illness could be solved. Johnny was so excited that he couldn't wait to bring Huss to the hospital. Looking at the excited Johnny, Huss took off his round hat and walked to the glass, glanced at Rosie, with a confident smile on his plump face. It's just a trifle. Chapter 110. Death of God. Huss stretched out his hand and pressed it against the glass, and a crimson energy suddenly turned into a vortex and appeared above Rosie out of thin air. And Rosie, who was lying on the sickbed, couldn't help but tremble. The wisps symbolized the unknown. The black smoke of the disease floated from her body, and then was sucked into the crimson vortex in the sky above. As the last wisp of black smoke was peeled off, Rosie's complexion became more and more rosy, completely close to the skin color of a normal person. Breathing is also smooth. Huss let go of his hand with a smile, and the crimson vortex slowly dissipated and merged into the air. Facing Johnny's expectant eyes, he nodded. "It's done." Immediately, Johnny couldn't wait to open the door of the hospital bed and ran to the hospital bed. At this time, Rosie also opened her eyes. At this time, she didn't know what was going on, and she was embraced by her lover. The star-crossed couple enjoys an intimate moment. Tony touched his chin. "You can still cure diseases? Even cancer-like tumors can be glassed. If you open a hospital, I'm afraid you will become the richest man on earth in a short time. This ability is undoubtedly a huge temptation for the upper class. The rich and those in power don't give up money or power." A healthy body is what they yearn for. For the sake of health, many rich people do not hesitate to spend large sums of money to invest in the pharmaceutical industry, subsidizing medical laboratories to develop research experiments specifically for diseases. Ask yourself, even if Tony himself suffers from some kind of cancer that modern medical technology cannot attack, he will spend everything he has on someone like Huss. The fat man Huss shook his head. I can indeed cure certain diseases, but the cost is not small, and her disease was caused by that angel. What followed made Tony and the others involuntarily stunned. Then he frowned. Shit, it's no wonder that Rosie's illness came so fast. This is an angel? His heart is blacker than black oil. Natasha couldn't help but cursed out. Angels are creatures that symbolize purity, kindness, nobility, and beauty. These pronouns make many people think of angels at first. But today, this so-called noble creature broke this symbol again and again. Oh, there is no difference between these angels and devils. They all have extremely dirty souls. Hawkeye Clinton expressed his thoughts. It's just that the attack range of these words is a bit large, and Huss, who is also a devil, shrugged helplessly. But he also agreed, but still sarcastically said, compared with those bird people, the devil is much kinder. But Tony and the others just listened to these words. Heaven seems to be extremely bad now, but the devils are all black-hearted maggots, let alone the eldest brother. As far as it is now, although Huss has been showing his kindness, how many of Tony and the others dare to relax their vigilance against this guy? To be in the company of the devil is to be in danger all the time. Huss also knows what these people think. He doesn't care. He shows goodwill, nothing more than wanting to learn about some things about the sanctuary through them. In addition, he also wanted to win over Johnny. Although Ghost Rider is not a well-known figure in hell, and even has a bad reputation. He was ridiculed by countless demons as a humble thug created by Mephisto, but his strength should not be underestimated. If Johnny really grows up, it is definitely a very powerful existence, and building a good relationship is the first choice. That's why Huss was eager to help. Johnny and Rosie confided to each other on the sickbed, but Huss didn't take it seriously. The concept of love rarely appears in the devil's concept. In the cruel hell, love is like a cup of poison, which can kill people at any time. Those who can survive in and make a name for themselves have long since stopped believing in so-called love, family affection, and friendship. Because what I believed, I had already eaten it alive. Huss's personality is not bad, at least in terms of social ability is really full, and Tony and others revealed a lot of information about in heaven that is not particularly important. However, while chatting, Huss was suddenly taken aback. His eyes widened suddenly, and the fat on his face trembled as if frightened. This sudden change made Tony and Rogers look at each other, a little confused. Are you okay? Rogers asked after hesitating. At this time, Johnny also walked out with his arms around Rosie. At first he wanted to express his gratitude, but when he saw Huss' demented look, he immediately turned his head to look at Tony. He was beaten up by you? Who knows? Tony shrugged, indicating that he was confused. Huss was stunned for a few seconds before he came to his senses and murmured involuntarily, "This is really unimaginable." After speaking, he faced Tony and the others with a fiery look and said eagerly, "Hey, guys, do you have any contact with those people in Sanctuary?" "Why do you ask that?" Tony put a question mark on his face, but seeing Huss' excited appearance, he didn't know how to be euphemistic at all and said bluntly, "If you want to get to know them, I think the possibility of them killing you is very high." Smiley face. Since the arrival of the goddess Athena, the saints have appeared one by one. Every major incident has a lot to do with the devil. Especially when the demon king Mephisto came to the earth several times, those saint fighters didn't have a good attitude towards demons. Tony's words were indeed like pouring cold water on Hussey's forehead, which immediately calmed down his agitated mood. So, what happened? Johnny stared at Huss. Huss glanced at everyone, took a deep breath, and said something that surprised everyone. Just now, my informant from conveyed the news to me, saying that the Pope of the Sanctuary broke into heaven just now, forcibly took Malachi away, and slaughtered the entire heaven. The supreme ruler of heaven and God, a large number of archangels and angels have all fallen. Boom! These words were like a lightning strike, shaking everyone's bodies, and their hearts began to be overwhelmed. Tony's eyes were straight, and he didn't dare to say anything. Are you kidding me? Chapter 111. The messenger of dawn heaven has been slaughtered. What terrible news this is. And God also fell because of this. Once this is preached, those Christians who believe in angels and God will collapse, despair, and go crazy. Not to mention Tony, Even people like Rogers were taken aback by the news. In his time, the belief in God in the United States reached a very terrifying level, and even banknotes were printed with "We believe in God." In the era of war, people died all the time. At that time, the United States needed a spiritual totem, and God is the best totem. In the army, many soldiers will pray devoutly before going to the battlefield. Pray that you can survive on the battlefield full of gunfire, which shows how influential it is. Even in modern times, such a belief culture has gradually weakened. But in the world, believers who believe in God cannot be counted at all. Rogers himself has never had any belief in God, but he also understands how much God occupies in the hearts of many people. But it was such a great, omnipotent existence that fell unexpectedly. Rogers' expression management was completely out of control. He shook his head, smacking his tongue, and said in disbelief, "This is really unimaginable." Yeah, now both in heaven are in chaos. Huss looked complicated, excited, and hesitant. Heaven has been captured, God and a large number of high-end angels have fallen, and heaven has become very weak. There are already many powerful beings in hell, ready to call up an army to fight for heaven. Next, another huge turmoil. The status of in heaven are completely different. According to what you said, is not willing to be under heaven. In order to compete for resources and interests, they must join hands with each other to launch a real, plunder heaven, or even occupy heaven. As an arms dealer, Tony knows certain things. It is natural to know how cruel and tragic the next war will be. The two opposing forces, after countless years of development, have approached a state of balance. There may be friction between the two sides, but they dare not start a war easily because they are afraid of each other. But now that the balance is broken, those greedy and powerful demons in 743 hell, the evil gods will certainly not let go of such an opportunity and make trouble. Hey, you're right, even I have some ideas. Huss grinned. He is very interested in starting a war with heaven, fighting in heaven, or something. Tony and the others looked at each other and kept silent about it. As human beings, they were not qualified to participate in the war between heaven and hell. Rogers was a little worried. If the two sides start a war, will it affect the world? No. Huss said categorically, those people in are stupid and won't let the war spread to the world. The sanctuary protects the world, and even for this reason the Pope of the sanctuary entered heaven and started a massacre. The reason was that a mere low-level angel set off a storm. The Devil Kings in are all wily guys. During this period, definitely not dare to mess around. Huss saw clearly. Although his status in hell is not too high, he is still a famous person, and he knows many things by heart. Today's Earth is completely a restricted area, and no one is stupid enough to want to provoke the sharp-edged sanctuary because of the world. Not to mention, the goddess behind the sanctuary has never appeared until now. Rogers and the others were relieved. Natasha even smiled and said, "To be honest, when I was still in S.H.I.E.L.D. a few years ago, I never thought of this day. You should really be thankful that the benevolent radiance of that goddess spreads all over the world, and the earth is blessed by a true God, and your civilization will develop smoothly like never before." Huss envied all of them. It is a great honor for any race to be favored by a powerful god. It also means that this race will not be targeted by other greedy and powerful existences, and will move forward in a stable environment. This is obviously a very extravagant thing for many races. Tony shrugged. Well, to be honest, I am very grateful to that goddess now. In the past, he never believed in any gods or demons, but now, any blessings and glory are nonsense. But now, to be honest, if he can, he really wants to give the painting that he values most to that goddess. It was a painting his mother drew for him when he was a child, and it was his most cherished thing. Of course, the way Tony treats women in return is to date, but this is obviously absolutely impossible. First of all, after having Pepper, he has turned his prodigal son back. Most importantly, do you want to date a goddess? That was no different from courting death. If he had even the slightest thought in the face of that goddess and was seen through, he would be thrown into by the goddess 99% of the time and enjoy the demon's life-smashing meal. The last blasphemous guy has been chopped up to nothing, and that video has reached billions of views on social media so far. With the lessons learned from the past, Tony will not be stupid and have ideas. He doesn't think that his MK armor can stop the goddess' anger. And the kindness of this goddess is enough to make Tony feel respected, so he won't think about it. Huss affirmed the expression in Tony's eyes. Obviously, Tony knew how to reciprocate kindness. Even the devil would like such a guy. He turned his head and glanced at Johnny and Rosie. He held the hat to Rosie with the ancient etiquette, bent down and signaled. Congratulations, beautiful lady. You have won the love of a night. I wish you your future is always happy. Although Huss is obese, he is not obnoxious overall, and even very likable. Perhaps this is the nature of the devil. Are you leaving? Johnny raised an eyebrow. Of course, how can such a lively event lack me? I wanted an angel's soul 10,000 years ago. It must be a pleasure to torture. Huss shook the fat on his body. While speaking, his body slowly go to the other end of the passage. Following his footsteps, he could see that the lights above the passage had begun to flicker. In a trance, the passage seemed to be burning, and it seemed to become a gate leading to hell. In the flickering lights, Huss's figure gradually became blurred. Just before Huss was about to leave, he seemed to remember something, paused slightly, and turned his head to look at Johnny. By the way, Johnny, I'll give you a piece of advice. Don't give up your vigilance. Indulging in peace is a very stupid thing for Ghost Rider. After finishing speaking, Huss' figure disappeared immediately. With his disappearance, the flickering light in the passage became stable, and the distant sunlight came in through the window, bright light and shadow cast on everyone. Johnny was in the light and shadow. His face happened to be half bright and half bright. Dark. It seems to indicate something. Everyone at the scene recollected Huss' words and fell into silence. A war between and heaven. And Kyle, who was the fuse, was in front of the Pope's palace in the sanctuary. In front of the magnificent building of Noda, the Archangel Luther and Malachi were kneeling on the bluestone ground. In front of them was Kyle, Beifa, wearing the clothes of the Pope. Behind them were Tina, Bart, and others. People, looking directly at Kyle with hands behind their backs. The faces of the two angels were ashen, completely sinking into decadence. Within the sanctuary, the power of the two of them was completely blocked, which was worse than that of ordinary people. Kyle ignores looking at the two of them. He issued a sentence. Luther came to the world to kill 5 innocent lives. I pronounce the sentence with the will of the goddess Athena. Smiley face. The death penalty will obliterate his will, and his soul will become a guardian spirit to inspire a new dawn messenger and protect the world. Malachi, trying to cause turmoil in the world for selfish desires, sentenced to death, threw his soul into the bottom of the volcano, endured the pain of burning, and pointed to dissipation. The two lowered their heads and remained silent when they heard the sentence. Obviously completely desperate, when Kyle's sentence fell, he saw the golden particles in the space around the two continue to gather. Luther's body curled up uncontrollably, his body melted, and the will and memory in his soul were all wiped out by the supreme power, and finally turned into a ball of golden light. And Malachi was even simpler. His body disintegrated by itself, and his azure soul was forcibly squeezed into a ball of light the size of a glass bead. The two of light rushed to the sky in an instant, pierced through the barrier covering the sanctuary, and respectively cut through the air towards the outside of the earth. Bart and the others looked up at the two light clusters disappearing into the sky. Their eyes moved slightly. Forget about Malachi. What is the spirit of the angel, the messenger of dawn? Could it be His Majesty's instruction? Luther is the archangel of heaven. Everyone saw that Pope Kyle used that powerful power to infuse it and transform it into a powerful angel spirit. If this energy is obtained by someone, it will quickly become extremely terrifying. The strong. Although its potential may not be as good as that of Saint Seiya, it is definitely not much worse. After thinking for a while, everyone still didn't understand the meaning. Of course, everyone didn't understand. It's all because of Kyle's own interest. Mephisto made a ghost knight. She just made a dawnbringer walking in the world. After all, it's a bit wasteful for an archangel soul to be so wasteful too extravagant. In other words, Malachi is pure iron trash, otherwise he would have to be like Luther. Kyle looked at Bart and the others in front of her and nodded secretly. These children who were personally selected by her are the most outstanding among human beings. The short-term cruel practice has made Bart and his group a big step forward for the small universe. Breaking through the 7th sense is only a matter of time. This is actually quite slow. After all, the little lion Regulus has changed too much compared to Bart's. You know, these little guys can be trained by her personally, openly cheating. If there is no progress, she will cry to death. With the death of God, there will be a war between and heaven. You need to pay attention at all times, but you must not neglect your practice. Yes, His Excellency the Pope. Scatter, Kyle said softly, and the figures of the people immediately turned into rays of light and disappeared in place. But at this time, Sol stayed where he was, and Kyle looked at Sol indifferently, making the latter's scalp a little numb, and Sol was not used to the pressure until now. Lord Pope, I have come to ask you to resign. Heimdall has sent a message that Loki is missing. I have to go and find him. Kyle nodded slightly. Looking at Sol with a trace of anxiety in her eyes, she laughed a little and gave a little hint. He is being targeted by an ambitious man in the universe, and he is not very dangerous yet. A careerist? Sol frowned. His inner worries became more and more intense. He beat his chest with his right hand and said gratefully, "Thank you very much, His Excellency the Pope." Colorful beams of light pierced the sky. In the blink of an eye, Thor returned to Asgard, and in the resplendent Rainbow Bridge Master Control Building, he saw the loyal guard Heimdall in armor. Heimdall released the hilt of bolt steel, the sword of guardian of the Rainbow Bridge, on the console, and walked down from the platform. Sol. Where is the last place he disappeared? Heimdall. Planet F-43. Where is he looking for an intermediary who sells news? But when I focused my eyes on the past, he had disappeared. Do you think he's still alive? Of course, no one in this universe is stupid enough to kill someone from Asgard, and he is also the son of God King Odin. Heimdall said firmly. The name of Asgard is not weak in the universe. Killing an Asgardian is completely different from killing an Asgardian prince, which is equivalent to declaring war on Asgard. A furious Odin would lead an army of Asgard to tear that fool to pieces. Heimdall was pretty sure there would be no such people in this universe. Sol agreed with this, continuing to ask, "So you think he was taken?" "Yes, and it is very powerful. Although the current Loki is not as fast as Thor, but his own strength is very good. With his wisdom and magic, it is impossible for ordinary people to capture Loki." The sense of urgency in Sol's heart became stronger and stronger. Few of the powerful guys in the universe would attack the people of Asgard. Adding Loki's identity, I'm afraid that, as the Pope said, an ambitious person took him away. Chapter 112. Loki disappears. Why? Why take Loki? Is someone really targeting Asgard? Who will it be? A series of questions lingered in Sol's mind. After trying his best to settle down in the past few months, his original reckless character had changed a little bit. He became as Odin expected, began to mature, know how to think. He's not going to save Loki on impulse. Looking at Sol, who was in deep thought, Heimdall showed a slight smile on his cold face, obviously very pleased with Sol's change. What do you think? Heimdall. Thinking carefully in his mind, he recalled the forces that had affiliation with Asgard in the past, but he excluded them one by one. In desperation, he could only ask Heimdall. As the guardian of the Rainbow Bridge of Asgard, Heimdall has stored countless information of Asgard in his mind. Sol felt that Heimdall must have guessed something in his mind. Sure enough, just as Thor thought, Heimdall pondered for a moment, and then slowly said, "Before, the conspiracy against Asgard was too obvious. I think it was probably to attract you or Loki, for to capture you alive. I think all three empires in the Milky Way are possible, and the Kree Empire has appeared before." "You mean that people from the Kree Empire are the most likely?" Thor turned to Thor's hammer in his hand, a little puzzled. The three great empires of the Milky Way are all very powerful forces in the universe. The three empires check and balance each other and target each other. The relationship between the Kree Empire and the Skrull Empire is the worst. Over the years, the wars between the three empires have affected countless races and caused countless deaths. Afterwards, the three empires reached a peace agreement to express peace. The technology of the Kree Empire is very powerful, and to a certain extent, its power is not inferior to Asgard. But how dare those blue-skinned guys attack Asgard? Although Odin is old, the furious Odin is not something the Kree can bear. It should be some restless high-ranking carry, and they should not be the main people. Maybe there should be a black hand behind it. Heimdall said softly. This is really interesting. Sol's tone was very cold. No matter what, I want to see who dares to capture Loki and who can bear the wrath of Asgard. You want to go in person? Heimdall knew Thor very well, and he could already guess what the other party wanted to do by seeing Sol's expression. Since they have captured Loki, I am the biggest bargaining chip against Asgard. I believe they will definitely take action. But if you are captured, it will put Asgard in a very embarrassing near ground, and Odin will also be troubled by it. Oh, they can take Loki away, but if they want to take me away, the price they have to pay is not small. Sol showed a confident smile. Since they don't want to kill me, they will definitely have reservations. I practiced in the sanctuary, which has transformed my strength. They have to pay a big price. He was confident enough in the past, but now in the sanctuary, besides being perverted to those saint fighters, his rapid growth in strength has made him more confident. In the past, he has survived all wars, big and small, and now there is no reason to back down. And, who says I'm alone? Sol grinned, and the smile on his face made Heimdall somewhat familiar. He actually saw Loki's little plotting against someone in Sol's smile. He couldn't help but raised his eyebrows. Are you sure? Sol. Of course, send me there. Even if I'm in a crisis, my new friends will be angry, even if they will laugh at me afterwards. After receiving an affirmative answer, Heimdall stopped talking nonsense and came to the console, grasping the hilt of the Guardian's sword with both hands and exerting force downward. Crunch boom. In the next second, a channel with a colorful vortex suddenly lit up with dazzling light, accompanied by a terrifying suction force. Sol didn't struggle and let the suction force pull him into the channel. Heimdall closed the rainbow bridge. He looked at the door leading to Asgard, and a figure appeared there at some point. Seeing the person, Heimdall immediately stepped down from the console, knelt down on one knee, lowered his head, and respectfully said, "Are you really assured that Sol will go alone?" When he communicated with Sol just now, Odin's order was conveyed in his mind. Heimdall will let Thor go. Otherwise, no matter how much he believed in Sol, he would not let him leave easily for such a major event. Odin was wearing armor and holding Gungnir, the Spear of Eternity. He tapped the ground lightly to signal Heimdall to stand up. He stared into his eyes and said in a deep voice, "This is the chance I gave him." As soon as these words came out, Heimdall raised his head in surprise. "You mean? It's just what you think, Heimdall. I don't have much time. I am satisfied with Sol's growth in the past few months, but he wants to be king. He is not enough. His prestige is not enough for him ascending the throne. This time is his chance to show his growth to the gods and people of Asgard." Yes, Heimdall was still a little worried. To be able to instigate a high-ranking Carrie executive to arrest Loki, it is obvious that the forces behind it must be extraordinary, and this trip must be full of crises. Odin saw Heimdall's worry, shook his head and said, "A true king will not be afraid of a road full of thorns. He will overcome all plots and dangers, and I trust Sol." If Odin was sure, Heimdall was silenced. Odin looked towards the passage of the Rainbow Bridge and murmured coldly, "Are you testing me, or testing that one? There should be both, arrogant and stupid." Listening to Thor's words, Heimdall's eyes moved. Did Odin really know who did it? He dared to test that goddess. It seems that this person has extraordinary background. In the vast starry sky, one can vaguely see the afterglow brought by the burning star from the endless distance. In one of the planets, under the afterglow of that ray, it was full of desolation and blood. This is a planet very far away from the star. Because of the distance and location, the planet is filled with wind and snow all year round. Under the snowflakes all over the sky, a thick layer of heavy snow has accumulated on the surface of the Earth. On this desolate planet, there are cities that attract countless space pirates, mercenaries, and bounty hunters. The city is full of desire and consumption. Smiley face. Casinos, bars, etc. have everything that one expects to find, and under the various colors full of temptations, it attracts countless people from other parts of the universe to come for consumption and entertainment. But in a wide building in the city, different from the hustle and bustle outside, everything here is quiet and dark. The cold colors and the unique decoration of the spacious house make the style here appear extremely abrupt and rough. A burly blue-skinned man in armor stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the bustling city outside the window, as well as the spaceships that kept landing in the heavy snow and the figures coming out of it. "Great accusers, are we really going to do this?" Behind him, a blue-skinned man also wearing armor glanced at the quietly standing figure behind him and said hesitantly. The blue-skinned man called the accuser turned around, wearing the helmet that looked like a metal bucket, revealing his original appearance. His chin and his face were covered with a layer of black branding, which made the whole person look extraordinarily majestic, especially those cold eyes, full of pressure. He is Ronan, the highest accuser in the accusation group of the Carrie Empire, who controls the military power and maintains the legal organization. At this time, he seems to be a little silent, but under the silence, there is a tyranny that destroys all life at any time. He looked at the quiet and silent Loki on the opposite side and said in a low voice, "An ancient, but there is no need for us to be afraid of the decaying Asgard. Asgard, when Odin grows old, he is no longer a threat, and the great Kree Empire is no longer afraid. I need him to trade for me something that changes everything. This thing will make me smash all doubts, and that ridiculous so-called peace agreement." The sound echoed in the room, causing the Kree officers under his command to bow their heads in fear. At your will, great accuser. While speaking, one of the Kree officers winked, saw the colorful beam of light falling from the sky through the glass window, and immediately said, "The great accuser, the Asgardians are here." The accuser turned around abruptly and looked out of the window, his pupils reflecting the fading colorful beam of light. Tilting his head slightly, full of pressure, he said without looking back, "Who do you think it could be? Of course it's my stupid brother." Loki, who was originally silent, suddenly showed an evil smile. "You know what to do. My suggestion is to ask your subordinates not to offend him," Loki said softly, but his tone was full of contempt. "Oh, you think he can slaughter the army I brought?" The accuser spoke calmly, but everyone could hear the hidden anger in it. If Loki didn't give a reasonable explanation, the brutal supreme accuser would not mind tearing it to pieces. But Loki didn't show the slightest expression of fear. If it was him before, you might be able to do it. However, after several months of training in the sanctuary, his strength is already extraordinary. He holds Thor's hammer in his hand, and he can crush all enemies with thunder. Your fleet is very powerful, but unfortunately, it is still fragile in his eyes. So, my suggestion is, don't provoke him. Is that your bragging? You can give it a try, as long as you don't mind all of your people being buried in this desolate snowstorm planet. Kree soldiers are never afraid of death, Ronan said in a low voice without turning his head. Let the humble Asgardians see the power of the great Kree Empire warriors. Yes, accuser. Behind him, a Kree officer nodded, turned around and left solemnly, and when he passed by Loki, he even showed a disdainful look. Facing such a look, Loki didn't pay attention at all, but waited, watching these pompous fools kill themselves. In the city streets, Thor holds Thor's hammer, braving the wind snow, walking step by step, left one after another snowflake footprints on the ground along the way. However, these footprints did not last long before they were covered by wind and snow. After walking for a while, Sol stopped under one of the street buildings in the city. Looking at the billboard with Tusa's name written on it, he knew that this was the place he was looking for. He reached out and pushed open the door and walked in. Walking through a long corridor with a length of 7 or 8 meters, I came to a slightly dark room inside. In this small and messy room, a pink-skinned short person is sitting on the sofa drinking an unknown bottle of wine, while looking obscenely at the beautiful robot woman dancing in front of the projection screen. Wow, it's really good. Indulging in the dance, he didn't notice the approaching Sol. Sol glanced at the room, and then walked in front of this person. Seeing that the person didn't seem to notice his arrival, he put the hammer on the table in front of him, making a dull sound. Boom, the shaking figure seemed to frighten him. The hand holding the wine trembled suddenly, and the wine spilled from the bottle onto his body. He hurriedly stood up from the sofa, and then saw Sol's waist. He was stunned for a moment. His gaze gradually moved up, and he saw Sol looking down at him. After looking at Thor's armor and Thor's hammer on the table, he said in surprise, "It's really strange. I didn't expect that an Asgardian prince would leave, but another one would come. You are Tusa, the middleman here?" "That's right. It looks like you should be Sol of Asgard. What do you want from me?" The middleman Tusa put down the wine bottle, picked up a rag from the side and wiped his wet clothes and asked. Thor's thick voice echoed in this not-so-large room. "My brother, did Loki come to look for you?" "That's right. He did come to me to buy news," Tusa said, throwing the wiped towel away, just covering Thor's hammer. Sigh. Chapter 113. Thor vs. Kree Army. If you're here to look for him, it's unfortunate, buddy, he's already left. Tusa waved his hand. Did anything unusual happen before he left? It seems a little nervous. What did you tell him? Wow, buddy, although you are the honorable prince of Asgard, I am an intermediary, and what I sell is news. What I said before is enough, and you need to spend the rest. Tusa smiled. Sol didn't dwell on this issue. He took out a small cloth bag from his waist and threw it in front of Tusa. Make a crisp sound. Tusa opened the small bag and saw the money inside. He whistled happily, and his tone became much more cheerful. "Thank you, my prince. Your generosity is commendable. As far as I know, 743, Ronan, the supreme accuser of the Kree Empire, is gathering his troops in an attempt to launch a war against Asgard." "Walter." Sol was full of disbelief. "Are you sure your news is true?" The supreme accuser is obviously a high-level authority figure in the Kree Empire, with a tough attitude and a complete hawk. Thor believed that this man would wage war on any force, but how could he wage war on Asgard? Leaving aside the unequal combat power between the two armies, why did Ronan want to target Asgard for no apparent reason? There is no friction or fight between the two parties at all. Tusa shrugged. It's up to you to decide whether this news is true, but I can guarantee that our news is definitely not fake. At least Ronan has indeed summoned his army. Sol stared at Tusa for a while. From the look on his face, he didn't know if he believed Tusa. Thank you very much for your message, Tusa. After finishing speaking in a deep voice, Sol turned and left. The burly and majestic figure disappeared into the dark corridor, and when Solden came to the door, he paused slightly when he stretched out his hand to hold the doorknob. And Tusa's faint voice came from behind. Sol, you should know what you mean when you open the door, right? Of course, Sol looked at the slightly dirty gate, as if through the gate. He could see the scene outside the gate, and there were strands of lightning in his eyes unconsciously. When I step into this planet by then, I had already arrived on the battlefield. Boom. Sol let go of his hand, but raised his leg and kicked at the door. Accompanied by the roar, the gate was kicked away, and the twisted gate was like a killing machine that ruthlessly harvested life. Wrapped in the wind and snow, it smashed away the Carey soldiers holding weapons outside the gate. There was a scream, and the blood that filled the sky dyed the snow-covered ground blue. At this time, Tusa in the house had disappeared without a trace. Sol sneered and walked out of the house, facing the wind and snow. His eyes flickering with lightning scanned the circle. The pedestrians who could still be seen on the street had long since disappeared, but standing in front of them were hundreds of thousands of Kree soldiers in armor, as well as densely packed small combat aircraft covering the sky and blocking out the sun. It turned out that at some point, Carey's army had already surrounded the street heavily. Sol looked up at the sky, and the loud voice conveyed, "Did Loki be taken away by you?" However, what responded to Sol was the dense beam of particle energy. "Okay, let's go to war then." Sol twisted his neck, and the turbulent lightning burst from his body instantly. The raging wave of electric light completely destroyed and collapsed the houses behind him. In the snowstorm and the beam of particle energy pouring down like a torrential rain, Sol squatted down slightly, and the terrifying explosive force suddenly cracked the ground under his feet. Boom, 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 boom. Sol, who jumped into the sky, showed the demeanor of the Asgardian thunder god. In the snowstorm, the electric light figure tore through the sky, weaving back and forth among the Kree combat aircraft that blocked the sky and the sun. I heard explosions and roars, and the of fire shining in all directions, as brilliant as fireworks. But what this brilliant fireworks represents is the disappearance of the lives of Carey soldiers. It's just that the officers commanding the Carey army didn't care about casualties at all, and gave orders on their own. Turn on the hypergravity mode and throw the distortion bomb. With the order of the officer, I saw many combat aircraft in all directions in the sky, exuding a strange red light, interconnected and finally turned the entire street space into red immediately. The launch of the supergravity technology also changed the gravity structure of the entire street. 10 times. Boom. With 10 times the gravity, Sol, who was massacring in the sky, immediately fell down like a meteorite, hitting the ground heavily, rolling up snow and gravel all over the sky. In the deep pit that was smashed, Sol lay prone on the ground, forcibly supporting his hands to get himself up. But at this time, the sky-wide attack has arrived. The dense particle beams and shells bombarded Sol continuously. Thor instinctively raised his left hand in front of him, and he was constantly being bombarded in front of him. Rumbling, terrible shell fire completely engulfed the entire street, and Sol also disappeared in it. Above the clouds in the sky, in a command warship, the Carey officer who commanded the battle looked indifferently at the picture on the big screen. Under the gunfire of the Carey army, no one can resist, not even the Prince of Asgard. What Protoss, what son of Odin? So what if the combat power of a single player is stronger than 5.0? What Carey is proud of is the advanced technology and weapons. With powerful technology, the single body will also be targeted when it is powerful. Officer Carey pondered for a moment, seeing the neighborhood that had been thoroughly bombarded by powerful artillery fire. Thinking that the overall situation was settled, he said, ready to capture. However, before he finished speaking, the terrible thunder burst in his ears. Dazzling and terrifying lightning burst out from the wind, snow and smoke in an instant, and the billowing clouds chopped down extremely thick lightning, which happened to bombard Sol's body. In the lightning, Thor stood upright and held Thor's hammer high, majestic. The flickering electric light exploded, and the electric arcs forked and crisscrossed like iron trees and silver flowers. Chapter 114. The angry Thor among the countless forked thunders. All the surrounding Carrie soldiers or flying chests in the sky were all burned to ashes. Continuous explosions, flames, and screams interweave the sky above this street. The other people in the city who came and went to watch the theater couldn't help laughing out loud. Haha, these damned arrogant blue-skinned guys have offended people who shouldn't be offended. They should have gone to long ago. Finally someone who can kill these blueskins. What a great guy. I have to buy him a drink. Controlling thunder. Is it a certain race that controls thunder's authority? It's very strong. Wow, it's Thor from Asgard. I didn't expect him to fight with the Kree. Could it be that Carrie is going to start a war with Asgard? Who knows, but no matter who it is, as long as those arrogant and domineering blueskins can die, I will support him. Almost everyone who can come and go to this planet is a rebellious guy. For the people of the Kree Empire, while they are afraid of their strength, they are also full of contempt and ridicule. Over the years, the strong style of the Carrie Empire has long been notorious in the universe. Almost no one likes them. Especially today when they came to this planet for entertainment and fun, the Kree people took strong control of it, which naturally made them even more unhappy. Now the Kree people are deflated, and a large number of blueskins have died, making them feel like they have poured a large bottle of iced fruit wine in a hot environment, and they are almost exhilarating. At the same time, someone also recognized the identity of Soul among the Thunder Pillars. For a time, many people have thought of a lot. In order to watch the play, many people simply drove the aircraft into the air against the wind and snow, and 16 or ran to the top of the tall building to watch the play. They want to see the result of this battle. In everyone's eyes, the densely packed aircraft in the sky of the street was completely wiped out, and all the Carrie soldiers were directly burned to ashes by the thunder summoned by Soul. When the thunder dissipated, Soul stood in the deep pit surrounded by lightning, exuding a strong and powerful aura. The aircraft using supergravity technology was burned to ashes, which also restored the air gravity structure, and Thor no longer bears 10 times the gravity. In fact, even if there is 10 times the gravity, it is not a problem for Soul at all. His physical structure is strong enough, and the almost brutal weight-bearing training in the sanctuary for several months has already allowed him to completely ignore gravity. It can only be said that the Kree completely miscalculated. A large number of casualties made the commanders of the fleet above the clouds darken. This is simply impossible. How could a mere prince of Asgard have such power? Unable to suppress his anger, he yelled into the communicator. Get me an electromagnetic pulse gun, and I will let him be buried here with this city. No, the supreme accuser is still there. An officer behind him hastily stopped him. These words made the commander choke, and only then did he think of Ronan, and quickly denied the order just now, and waited until he calmed down. He wanted to say something more, but Ronan's calm voice came to his ears. That's it. We miscalculated his strength. If we continue to fight, it will only cause more casualties to our soldiers. I will let Loki take action. You go and prepare. Yes, accuser. The commander responded respectfully. The next moment, the commander ordered the battleship to leave the planet. At the same time, in the street below, Thor looked up at the disappearing battleship above the clouds and couldn't help frowning. Just leave like that? The departure of the Kree directly made Soul a little confused, besieged inexplicably, and then chose to run away after being killed by him, which is completely different from the style of the Kree. Because it feels like he's too strong? Not only Thor, but even the people who watched the theater from a distance taunted after seeing Soul kill a large number of Kree people, but there was no follow-up. Huh, this is the Great Carrie Army? I really laughed to death. I was afraid of being killed by the Asgardian. I think this matter will definitely annoy the Kree people. Ha ha ha, the Kree people also know how to bully the weak and fear the strong. In the wind and snow, the sound of noise spread everywhere. Soul felt more and more that something was wrong. The Kree made such a big trick, and it ended in an anticlimactic end? Boom. When Saul was puzzled, suddenly there was the sound of the engine roaring in his ears. He subconsciously turned his head and saw a standard Carrie spaceship soaring into the sky in the distance, flying towards the sky. However, seeing this spaceship, Thor's pupils shrank suddenly. The figure in front of the spaceship's floor-to-ceiling windows was reflected in his eyes. It was Loki who was originally missing. His whole body was tied up, and his mouth was bound by a metal muzzle. Only the eyes with a hint of determination met Soul. And oh, Loki! Seeing Loki being captured, Thor immediately lost his composure, roared angrily, surged with divine power, and erupted with terrifying lightning. He spun Thor's hammer with his right hand and threw it upwards. Smiley face. The whole person roared and rushed to the sky immediately, and rushed to the spaceship that took Loki away. It's a pity that no matter how fast Soul is, he can't catch up. I saw that the spaceship had already opened the wormhole transition, and the golden honeycomb-like wormhole appeared in front of it, and the spaceship rushed immediately. A wormhole in the residence disappeared without a trace. In the next second, Thor flew to the original position of the spaceship, staring at the direction where the wormhole opened, his eyes filled with raging flames. Loki, gritting his teeth, he spit out his brother's name. Boom! The clouds and thunder exploded, and the terrifying electric light made the whole planet seem to be in a doomsday scene, which proved Soul's inner mood swings at the moment. Damn Kree, you will pay. The top floor of a new building being renovated in Texas. Tony stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking down at the workers coming and going who were decorating below, with a smile on the corner of his mouth. Tread, tread, tread. Behind him, Natasha, who was wearing a red coat and a white shirt, came over, handed the document in her hand to Tony, and looked down along Tony's line of sight. The corner of Natasha's mouth curved into a charming arc. You seem to be in a good mood, Tony. Of course, the Avengers have been established, and Johnny has agreed to join the Avengers. Isn't that something to be happy about? Maybe, but you are also very clear that the addition of Johnny does not mean that the Avengers have the ability to invade from outside forces from hell. Natasha turned her head to look at Tony. Don't be so pessimistic, Natasha. The construction of the building never happens overnight. It always takes a process. Tony shrugged. For the confident Tony, Natasha didn't give a damn. She hesitated for a moment. Her beautiful eyes accurately caught a black line on Tony's neck, and she said in a deep voice, "But I don't know if you can persist until the building is fully constructed. When it's done." Regarding what Natasha meant, Tony understood that Natasha obviously already knew about his physical condition. You knew already? Even if I'm blind, I can't see that you're drinking petroleum-like liquid. It's not written in your resume that you have this hobby. Ha, what a cute description. That's chlorophyll. Used to suppress the palladium element in my body, but the effect of this thing is getting worse and worse. Tony laughed, but what he said seemed terrifying. Natasha stared at Tony, who was full of indifference, and frowned. Are you really joking? That's the price. Tony tapped the arc reactor on his chest. It made me a superhero, but it also brought me a burden. Does Pepper know? No, I'm not ready to tell her yet. Maybe she will kill me if she finds out. Well, my suggestion is to have an operation to cure the hidden dangers in your body. The two walked towards the other side while talking. I've thought about it, but I have to solve another thing first. Nick Fury sent me a gift. This thing may help me solve my troubles. It seems you have to thank him. No, maybe I should sue him. It was originally a gift from my father. During the conversation, seeing Tony's expression, Natasha knew that this guy obviously had a solution to his hidden dangers, so she didn't bother to investigate further. The two walked into another wide hall. At this time, several people were already standing in the hall. Ghost Rider Johnny, Captain America Rogers, Clinton, Dr. Bruce Banner, and besides the members of the Avengers, there are three other figures. Mutant Cyclops Scott with red quartz eyes 743, Wolverine Logan, and Phoenix Girl, Jan. Welcome to the Avengers building. After greeting the others, Tony looked at Sheen and the others. To be precise, he should be looking at Sheen. Of course, it's not because of any other thoughts, but the other party is now the known supreme leader of the Mutant Academy. Iron Man, Tony Stark. The three of Sheen also greeted Tony. I believe you should have some communication, so I'm not talking nonsense. Tony invited everyone to sit on the sofa. The 4 rows of sofas were wide enough for everyone to sit down. There was a glass table in the middle. The sun was shining brightly outside the window, and the sunlight made the whole hall look quiet and bright. Tony and Rogers looked at each other. He sat on the sofa, bent his elbows on his thighs, and looked at Sheen. I hope you can join the Avengers. The Avengers. Jean and Scott. Logan looked at each other and said a word silently. Yes, I believe you should be aware of what happened in the past 2 days. I heard that Sheen realized that there were things from other worlds in Dallas. We rushed over, but unfortunately, we seemed to be late. Scott spoke first. Logan sat on the sofa beside him, smoking a cigar in silence. He is just a thug, and it is not his turn to communicate. That's right. Everyone can take a look. Tony snapped his fingers, and a holographic projection appeared in front of the three of them. The projection showed Johnny and Luther fighting on the Huangsha Highway that day, and Dallas Guslev series of videos. Beside the video, there is also a special description of the text, with Tony's explanation, let the three of Chin understand many secrets that others cannot know. It has to be said that these news did shock the three of them. Even Logan couldn't help but sit up straight. Siete, is our Earth so dangerous? It seems that we can still live until now. It is really the benevolence of these so-called gods. Logan couldn't help but sarcastically. As for who to ridicule, everyone knows. Chapter 115. Can't join the Avengers, Chin. Tony, you should be aware of our current situation. Jean ignored Logan's sarcasm and stared at Tony. Mutants were targeted because of the fall of the Professor and Magneto, and there were other reasons for her appearance. Although the situation of mutants is much better now than before. But there are more or less targets, both overtly and secretly. Mutants are now like a hot potato. Tony came into contact with mutants at this time, and even invited people from the X-Men to join the Avengers, which meant that the pressure of mutants was completely on the Avengers. Stark Industries, which Tony relies on, is the largest industry in the United States. If he really intends to target it, Tony will inevitably be under tremendous pressure. Tony understands this, of course, but he doesn't care at all. Nowadays, various forces from mythology have appeared one after another. This time, only the low-level angels in heaven almost put the earth into crisis. It shows how corrupt the situation is. At this time, we need to unite all living forces to stop foreign enemies. I don't care who they are, and I don't care how powerful they are. Whoever dares to stop them, let them come and enjoy the night's trial in person. Tony's tone was sonorous and forceful, and the firm determination made the three of Chin couldn't help but nodded secretly. Captain Rogers also said, we hope that human beings have their own power, not internal fighting. After the crisis comes, we watch those innocent lives die. Although Johnny was not wearing the iconic black leather armor at this time, but was wearing an ordinary coat, he still grinned. A smile. The spirit of vengeance has always been eager to judge those evils, but it has not really judged some people in power. Chin hearing looked at Johnny, and a red light flashed in his eyes. Is this the spirit of vengeance created by Mephisto? It is indeed a very powerful force, and I can feel that this is not your final form. Now that she can manipulate the Phoenix Force, she is already a real Omega-level mutant. She has reached the most subtle level of observation, and she can naturally see through the other spirit of revenge in Johnny's body. Not my final form? Johnny was full of question marks. Does Ghost Rider have a final form? Chin nodded affirmatively. I'm sure it's a very strange form, but you need to comprehend it yourself. Okay, Johnny was still a little confused, but his personality still kept him from worrying about this issue. So, what's your answer? Tony looked at Chin brightly. The latter pondered for a while, then nodded and then shook his head. We can join the Avengers, but I won't. Huh. Why? Tony was a little puzzled. The entire X-Men was powerful, but if he had to choose, then he would most like Jean, an Omega-level mutant, to be an Avenger. Chin's strength, in a sense, can be compared to the top combat power, enough to contend with the existence of the Saint Seiya. There is a huge difference between an Avenger with top combat power and an Avenger without top combat power. Chin's eyes flashed thoughtfully and replied, I don't know, but my intuition makes me refuse. In the future, I may have another path. Tony and the others looked at each other, but did not continue to persuade. At least, the merger of the X-Men into the Avengers has allowed Tony to initially achieve his goal. Afterwards, everyone had a meal together, and after carefully discussing and adding some details, Jan, Scott, and Logan returned to the Mutant Academy by aircraft. On the plane, Scott asked with some doubts, Jean, why do you want us to join the Avengers? Chaos is the ladder to step into the climber. Chin calmly said, we need to change the situation of mutants. Although we are different from ordinary people, we still live on this planet. Our position in this world is too embarrassing. Joining the Avengers will solve the problem? Logan raised his eyebrows. He was never good at thinking about these aspects. The Avengers are just a platform for us to face the public. The X-Men were only set up for mutants to seek peace, and never involved humans, because public opinion from all sides has always kept us in a state of separation from ordinary people, and ordinary people generally treat us as attitude is one of vigilance, of precaution, of disgust and hatred. We don't have a platform to show ourselves to the outside world, and we don't have mainstream media to make our voice heard. We have to change people's attitude towards us, and superhero is the best identity. Chin explained carefully. She never thought about it before, not even the professor. But now that she has broken away from the thinking between races, she can naturally think a lot. In fact, apart from this kind of milder means, she can be so strong that she can directly change the thinking of many people, but she can't, because once such a thing is taken found that it will undoubtedly completely arouse the vigilance and panic of all human beings towards mutants. After all, no one wants to be manipulated by others. And Chin's moral bottom line would not allow herself to do so. Hearing Chin's explanation, Scott immediately reacted, but asked another question. Then why don't you join the Avengers? Smiley face. My premonition tells me that I cannot join the Avengers. Secondly, my joining will make many people wary of the Avengers and even target them. Chin shook her head. Even if she didn't have that premonition, she wouldn't join. Xiaomaheo, the status of the Avengers is recognized by the U.S. government. The Avengers can recruit mutants, but there are too many mutants. If she joins in person, those people will immediately change their attitude towards the Avengers. Those in power can form Avengers because of external pressure, or they can give corresponding rights and freedoms to Avengers. But the bottom line is that, if she joins the Avengers with her strength and identity, those people have to consider whether the Avengers will become her private armed force. Such a team with extraordinary strength and strong individual strength can only be led by Captain America Rogers or Tony. And it must not be controlled by mutants, otherwise it will cause a strong reaction from the government. That's why Chin resolutely refused. Chapter 116. The Transformation of the Phoenix Girl. So that's how it is. In the empty and quiet hall, Clinton suddenly realized. That's right, although I don't want to admit it. Although the Avengers nominally have higher authority than any department, in fact, we will be more or less restrained, and these restraining pressures come from a lot. Although Nick Fury is and hateful, he is right. As our team members get more and more powerful, our uncontrollable factors will become bigger and more daunting. Tony spread his hands. In the previous conversation, he immediately understood the twists and turns, and Tony's political sense is not bad at all. Otherwise, his MK armor was created. Why he could use his means to directly withstand the pressure of all parties coveting the armor. He just doesn't want to care about it. But if he really cares about it, none of the little thoughts of those politicians can escape his eyes. It's really troublesome. These people are still making such small thoughts at this time. Johnny complained disdainfully. If you have the ability to calculate the sanctuary, oh, they don't dare. These people are just using the rules to count us who are under the rules. Those people in the sanctuary, no, they should be called gods. Gods are above the rules. Counting gods, nothing it's different from committing suicide. Natasha pointed out the facts. Tony stretched out his index finger to point at Natasha, agreeing. That's right, that's the truth. Then he spread his hands and sarcastically said, using rules to enslave others is what we have always done. We point to this, but others don't care at all. Each of them has a reason to join the Avengers, but none of them are for the people in power. They are all just for real peace in the end. Well, we're not discussing this. Rogers stopped the topic with a headache. Anyway, he is also the captain of the United States, and he has completely become a criticism meeting after talking about it. In addition, although Jean did not join the Avengers, the addition of Scott and Logan has already represented her attitude. When it comes to a crisis, she will definitely take action. I feel that she seems to have changed a lot than before, and the pattern has become bigger and more intelligent. Natasha said. Jean used to be a student of Professor X, and Hank, Bifa, as a representative, spoke out for the mutants and the government, and used diplomatic means to seek peace for the mutants, but the effect was not satisfactory. This method is very gentle, but it is very naive. The so-called diplomatic means are nothing but nonsense for those politicians. What the mutants care about is to seek an equal status for the mutants with the mainstream people, but the politicians want to take advantage of the mutants as a group. Benefit. In essence, the purposes of the two parties are completely different. So mutants will only be suppressed constantly. True peace will always be sought with an iron fist. The battle between Chin and Saint Seiya was well known in the first battle, showing the terrifying power of the Omega human-shaped nuclear bomb, which directly changed the situation of mutants in an instant. Neither Magneto nor Professor X has changed this point. The most important thing is that Chin's character and methods have changed. In addition to possessing absolute strength, she also showed her own tough and iron-blooded wrists. The armed forces that were trying to invade the Mutant Academy were mercilessly reduced to ashes on the spot. A person with strength but honesty is not scary, such as Professor X, because he will think a lot, and he will be scruples about many variants people. And Magneto is tough and powerful, but it is a pity that he does not have a little bit of political thinking. Anything he does is not painful to those politicians. On the contrary, he has no IQ. And there's Professor X and the X-Men in the way. Those politicians completely regarded the mutants as meat on the felt board, laughing at the infighting between the two sides. But Chin is different. She has no restrictions, she doesn't care about anyone, and she has the experience of blackening, which is very scary. An uncontrollable Omega mutant, if she really angered her, has the ability to destroy the entire United States. Not to mention anything else, at least none of their high-ranking politicians can escape. So Chin's cleverness is here. She sees the worries of politicians, and it just so happens that a series of mythical creatures such as demons and angels appear one after another, which has caused too much pressure on high-level human beings. Politicians have turned their backs, choosing instead to be superheroes, to win the hearts and minds of the people and change the people's views on mutants. This is why Natasha said that Chin has changed a lot, because Chin's choice this time will usher in a new life for the mutant group. After all, not many people can understand the situation and make choices. Maybe it has something to do with her experience. Tony squinted his eyes. After all, it can change people in such a short period of time. Certain past experiences must be the most important factor. Isn't it true that he himself can become Iron Man? Because of that kidnapping incident? Johnny said at this time, she is very dangerous. She seems to be able to see the spirit of revenge. There are not many such people. Of course, when she turns black, she will be the one who can compete with the Saint Seiya. Tony operated the watch on his wrist a few times. But it's okay. At least it seems that she shouldn't be affected too much. Otherwise, I wouldn't dare to invite them. Johnny shrugged. The establishment of the Avengers has achieved preliminary results, but we still need enough running it. Do you have a goal, Tony? As the captain of the Howling Commandos during World War II, Rogers understands what is most important in building a team. The Avengers need an opponent to complete the transformation and integration of the Avengers. Otherwise, the individual strength of everyone is strong, and they are just scattered sand. Tony tapped the watch lightly and saw a holographic projection light screen appear in front of everyone. Patterns and data information emerged on it. It shows some unknown and mysterious supernatural events that have happened or are happening in recent years. Everyone couldn't help being dazed after seeing the dazzling event information. Great gifts yet. Have so many unexplainable things happened before? Clinton was taken aback. Chapter 117. Call my name, Elsa London. This city, known as the Smog City, is rainy today. The drizzle is falling on the city, adding a touch of fantasy to the British-style buildings, and the night is full of feasting and feasting. On the street, Elsa was wearing plain clothes, holding a black umbrella, and hurriedly walked towards the subway station with the umbrella in her left hand. It was approaching early morning, but fortunately, today was a weekend, and the subway was running 24 hours a day, so she didn't need to walk for nearly an hour. When I came to the underground subway station, it was 10 in the morning, and it was already empty. Under the old subway station, the surrounding lights, the slightly damaged posters on the walls, etc., everything looked so gloomy at night. Elsa was a little scared at this time. She is usually carefree. Charming, his face was a little pale. Elsa glanced around cautiously. She didn't know why, but she always felt that a pair of eyes seemed to be staring at her. This is not the first time this feeling has appeared, but it is especially strong today. Don't run into something unclean, right? Thinking of the devils and other monsters that have emerged in recent years, Elsa trembled all over. She held the umbrella with one hand and touched the cross necklace around her neck with the other, silently praying for the train to come quickly. Fortunately, the train did not keep her waiting too long. A few minutes later, the white train stopped at the station. As the gate opened, Elsa hurried in. There was no one in the train, but the bright lights still gave Elsa a little courage. Elsa sat down quickly. She couldn't help shaking her legs. She didn't look back at the station at all. She just wanted to go home quickly. The train started. The speed was very fast. The sound was very small, and everything seemed very quiet. Elsa silently watched the list of the opposite stations, silently counting how many stations were left. The picture kept skipping across the opposite car window. Elsa's mood also gradually calmed down. However, the mutation came suddenly. Nourish, nourish, nourish. I saw that the originally bright lights of the train began to flicker for some unknown reason. Not only that, but in the dark compartment, Elsa suddenly had a disgusting rancid smell in her nose. The light images kept flashing, and the upper ceiling of the carriage seemed to be eroded by an inexplicable force, and it began to slowly become black. The originally clean compartment became rusty in just a short moment. Elsa stood up abruptly, eyes widening. The lights flashed and flashed, and the light and darkness in the picture in front of me continued to flash alternately. Suddenly, the lights dimmed suddenly, and the interior of the car became dark and dead silent. Elsa couldn't see clearly what was going on inside the carriage, but her heart was already filled with panic. God, don't let me encounter bad things. I have to go to work tomorrow. If I am late, the boss will definitely deduct my wages. Don't come to me, okay? I'm just a poor waiter. I still want to save a sum of money to buy a ranch of my own, although it's still a lot worse. Under nervousness, Elsa began to chatter instinctively. While talking, she opened her big eyes and turned her head nervously to look around, for fear that some terrifying monster would appear in front of her in the next second. But unfortunately, things are so unsatisfactory. The originally dark carriage suddenly brightened up, and light can always give people courage and hope. With the light, Elsa's heart was put back in her stomach at once. She breathed a sigh of relief, but on her left side, there was a panting sound and a foul smell. It was this sudden movement that frightened Elsa, and her whole body froze in place. Her expression suddenly became terrified, and she turned her head to look to the left bit by bit, but there was nothing in front of her eyes, and the perspective in front of her eyes was empty. Elsa was puzzled. She blinked, and the next second, an ugly and ferocious face suddenly appeared. Ah! A hoarse scream came out of Elsa's mouth immediately. Under extreme fear, Elsa reacted completely differently from ordinary people. She raised the closed umbrella in her hand and pointed it at the front of her face. The monster hit the head hard. The scene fell into embarrassment for a while. Al-Shagan smiled and threw away the only handle left in her hand. I didn't mean it. Do you believe it? Seeing the terrifying monster in front of him staring at him in a daze, Elsa asked tentatively, trying to apologize in this way so that the other party would let him go. However, the monster's face became more ferocious. It opened its mouth full of sharp teeth, and the murderous intent and tyranny in its blood-colored eyes became more intense. Seeing such a situation, Elsa immediately sentenced herself to death. Oh, roar! The monster suddenly stretched out its sharp claws and slashed at Elsa, wanting to tear Elsa alive. The latter couldn't help closing his eyes, but just when the sharp claws approached Elsa, he saw the cross necklace on Elsa's neck suddenly shone brightly. Dazzling golden radiance ripples swept in all directions. Bang! Smiley face. The monster in front of him was blown away by the impact of the golden energy, and the glass of the train was also shattered, and the broken glass scattered all over the sky. The sudden change made Elsa tentatively open her eyes, and she was taken aback when she saw the picture in front of her. He raised his hand blankly and pinched the cross necklace around his neck. Is it you? She bought this necklace at a jewelry store yesterday. Although the shape is a bit simple, the price is very cheap, only £1, so she bought it on a whim. But unexpectedly, it actually saved him. Could it be that this thing is the protagonist in the movie? The script, at the moment of crisis, the gods descended from heaven to solve the crisis? Thinking of this, Elsa actually forgot her current situation for a moment and began to laugh foolishly. Call my name, Elsa. Call my name, Elsa. At this time, a strange, capable, and clear female voice sounded in Elsa's ear. The voice dragged Elsa out of her reverie. Calling your name? What's your name? Riven. Riven? Elsa couldn't help calling out this name she had never heard of before. But with this cry, a dazzling golden light burst out from the necklace. Boom. Chapter 118. The girl who accidentally broke into hell under the turbulent golden light. All the haze was dispelled. Bang! A terrifying golden beam of light pierced through the top of the train, and under the beam of light, Elsa began to slowly float up, and vast power continued to emerge from her body. Behind him, a pair of pure white wings loomed. Holy, noble, noble. Elsa has never experienced this feeling. In her current vision, the world in front of her eyes seems to have undergone unprecedented changes. From the perspective of her pupils, she seemed to see dense threads of various colors, and these threads were revolving on their own in a very strange trajectory. What is it? It's the wind, the tiny microbes in the air. There is also a terrifying energy constantly emerging in her body. She even felt that one punch from her was enough to blow up a mountain easily with 743. Floating in midair, Elsa still wanted to understand this sudden change, but her eyes froze for a moment, and in her superhuman senses, she found that there seemed to be something wrong with where she was. She glanced around. It was found that the train below had stopped quietly, but the train had become old and damaged, full of rust with a corrosive smell, and densely mottled moss on it. Most importantly, the world in front of me is no longer London. Here, a piece of blood, barren, full of gloom and darkness. Here, is a bottomless, endless abyss. The rock walls on both sides are soaring to the sky. Looking up, you can only see the bloodline. Here, where is it? Elsa was a little confused. The roar and wind of some non-human monsters can still be heard in my ears. Perhaps because of the powerful force in her body, Elsa has completely lost the negative emotions of fear at this time. What is more confused? Everything that happened today overwhelmed her. What is that train? What is her necklace? Why would she be given such great power? These questions kept flashing in my mind. She raised her hands and looked at her arms. The plain clothes she was wearing had disappeared and turned into very fine arm armor. She raised her hands subconsciously and saw a round golden mirror-like shape appearing in front of her. Ripples, looking at the reflection of his own figure. Elsa was even more confused. With a height of nearly 1.8 meters, his slender figure was covered with exquisite and gorgeous armor for some reason. The right arm, leg, waist, and abdomen are covered with thick dark golden armor. The chest is wrapped, the left hand is wrapped with a touch of blue gauze, and two blue streamers like angel wings are floating on the shoulders. The original long golden hair has also transformed into short silver blue hair. Her facial features are still the same, but due to the influence of shape and strength, her temperament has become more sacred and heroic. Just like the beautiful and heroic heroine in the legend. Is this me? It's not bad. Although she couldn't figure it out, Elsa's original carefree character made her stop thinking about it, and instead looked at herself in the mirror happily. Appreciate a wave of beautiful self. Then I suddenly realized the problem of going back. Roar at this time. There was a terrifying roar from below. Elsa subconsciously looked, and it turned out that the terrifying monster in the train had climbed up from the hole above. The disgusting and ugly monster made Elsa's eyes flash with disgust. You're so ugly. Elsa raised her fist and aimed it down. Boom, the terrifying golden energy exploded in an instant, and along with the air waves, dazzling golden meteors bloomed in an instant. In an instant, the entire train, including the roaring monster, was engulfed. The latter's eyes were dull, completely unaware of why the prey suddenly possessed such terrifying power. In doubt, the train was completely wiped out. Rumbling, horrific shocks and strong winds raged, and the entire huge abyss began to shake. A large area was formed on the rock walls on both sides, and densely packed gravel continuously splashed down. Oh! The two blue ribbons on Elsa's back, like angel wings, fluttered with the wind, and her expression became stunned. She couldn't believe that she had such a terrifying destructive power with a tentative casual move. Okay, looks like I can be a superhero too, however, the premise is to leave here first. Bang, Elsa's figure paused. The air wave exploded, and the whole person immediately flew towards the abyss like an arrow. The huge explosion and air wave plowed two long lines on the rock walls on both sides. Ditch. Wrapped in strong wind and gravel, after flying for 10 minutes, Elsa finally flew out of the abyss. Finally flying out of the abyss, Elsa looked happy, but floating in mid-air. Looking around at the endless ground filled with black sand, her face turned bitter. What exactly is this place? Huh, did that girl actually go to hell? On the luxurious balcony of the Century Hotel in New York, the starry sky at night was empty. Kyle sat on a rocking chair in a bathrobe and drank a glass of wine worth thousands of dollars. Looking forward, he saw another person through the distant air. A girl flying around like a headless fly in the world. Kyle was amused by the girl's heroic and beautiful face looking for people. The angelic spirit she created with the soul of the Archangel Luther plus divine power gave the girl extraordinary power, no less than a saint warrior who awakened the sixth sense universe. And there is even greater potential to be tapped in 5.0. She didn't pay too much attention to letting the spirit of the angel find a suitable candidate, but she didn't expect that the girl would accidentally get on the train to hell. After pondering for a moment, a ray of sacred gold flashed in her eyes, giving instructions to the angelic spirit in the girl's body. Now that the girl is in hell, let the girl experience it there. I believe that girls will be able to gain enough experience in the cruel hell. The golden color dissipated, and she raised her head to look at the sky, and saw Sol on another distant planet, who was following the trace of her younger brother. Thanos, Kyle murmured indifferently. Chapter 119. Lucifer. Time is passing, the world is still running, but far away in London, a person has disappeared. A person identified as missing by the London police named Elsa. Elsa doesn't have many friends, mainly she is poor and comes from other small cities. Londoners are very xenophobic, and Londoners reject people from other cities. For them, other city people are country people. What's more, She is only the service industry personnel at the bottom of the social class. Her disappearance has not attracted much attention, and the police have not even been dispatched to find it. It was just determined to be missing, and the files were sealed. As for the Lord, at this time in hell, she has experienced countless battles that she can't count. In the purgatory world, Elsa roared angrily, and the ground was cracked. With a loud bang, she grabbed a terrifying and huge demon and smashed it heavily on the ground. The surging golden power exploded, and the demon's entire body was annihilated in an instant. Ash, rolling up black gravel and wreaking havoc in all directions. Seeing this situation, the dozens of low-level demons in the distance looked terrified, completely lost their previous greed, and fled quickly with their wings flapping. Elsa's eyes flashed a holy golden color. A golden energy ball floated in his palm and was thrown into the sky. Bang, rising to a certain height. The golden energy sphere exploded, and meteor-like golden particles pierced the sky. They were hit by those low-level demons screaming in terror, piercing through their heads, and their corpses fell from the sky. Go down. With a few plops, the corpse hit the ground in the distance heavily. Al Desert glanced at the corpses, and then the figure gradually floated up and continued to fly forward. She didn't know how long she had been here. A month? 2 months? She was looking for a way to leave this world, but she was as conspicuous as a beam of fire in the dark night, and those demons were like greedy wild dogs trying to devour her alive, which made her tireless. Countless battles have slightly changed the original girl's personality. She is used to those ugly demons. She no longer panics. She is already a qualified fighter. She is also used to the power brought to her by the angelic spirit. She has initially understood how to use this power to fight, and this may be the biggest gain. Of course, she still didn't understand the origin of the angel spirit. The voice calling her seemed to have disappeared. She just knew that her name was Riven, and she might have been a very powerful female warrior. When flying into the air, Elsa seemed to see a town 1,000 kilometers ahead, where countless demons gathered. Elsa's figure paused slightly, and she frowned. From her perspective, she could see countless demons and undead figures in that town. She suddenly realized something. Perhaps in that town, she could inquire about information about this world and how to leave it. But the problem is, as a human being, she also has the sacred aura that is incompatible with this world. Once she steps into the range, she is afraid that she will be besieged by the demons in that town. So, the biggest problem now is how to sneak in. Maybe I can simulate the breath of the devil, Elsa murmured thoughtfully, and slowly closed her eyes. The sacred aura gradually began to surge, and the aura reversed. A terrifying and evil force spread, and the armor she was wearing was gradually dyed black. Even the 2 blue streamers like angel wings turned into pure black. The pupil is rendered black. If she was a holy angel before, now she is more like a fallen angel. The ultimate evil, powerful. Elsa's beautiful face is lined with black threads, making her even more evil. It's very simple. Half an hour later, in the town of Hell, in front of a tavern called Devil Hotel, a mysterious woman wearing a black trench coat and hood came, making it impossible to see her face clearly. It was Elsa who came. Ding ring bell, opening 2 almost dilapidated wooden doors. Elsa stepped inside, and heavy metal music came to her ears. At this time, the inside of the bar was full of people, demons, undead, and all kinds of races from gathered together. In the midst of the explosive heavy metal music, everyone was addicted to it and twisted their bodies crazily. There are also humanoid demons in the corner drinking fine wine and eating all kinds of carrion with blood. Hustle and bustle. Music is the theme of this bar. Here, it is very similar to a bar in the world, but there are no guests here who are human. Elsa glanced at it and walked straight towards the bar. Along the way, she bumped into many demons who were obsessed with music and twisted their bodies, causing many demons to look angry and cold. It's just that Elsa ignored this and came to the bar. The bar seems to be made up of skulls, and there are skulls hanging on the skeleton racks, filled with various liquids. The long bar was already full of people. Elsa stood in front of the stage and looked at the dark-skinned demon bartenders inside. The demon bartender raised his hideous and ugly head, looked at Elsa, and said in a low and hoarse voice, "OHHH, it's really surprising. I didn't expect to welcome a noble fallen angel today. What is it? Let a noble fallen angel condescend to come here? John is at your service." It's not clear whether it's a mockery or a compliment, but Elsa chose to ignore it. Smiley face. She changed her voice, making it indifferent and charming, and said, "Where is this?" The frank words made John suddenly suspicious in his heart, but on the surface he remained calm. Dear Lord Fallen Angel, you are humorous. Of course this is hell, but this is the town of Ser under the rule of Lord Fando. I don't know that the fallen angel is your lord here to carry out some mission of Lord Lucifer? Hell? Fallen angel Lucifer? Elsa's heart sank. Although she had already guessed, she did not expect that she would still come to hell. Recalling the train that brought him here before, his eyes narrowed slightly under the hood. How long is the train to the world? I'm sorry, Lord Fallen Angel. All trains to the world are banned recently, Devil John said with an apologetic face. Perhaps because he was afraid of the high-status fallen angel's anger, he paused and continued to explain. I believe you also know that a residence has appeared in the world recently. As a result, the world has become a forbidden place. Even if the war between and heaven starts, they dare not spread to the world. So, hell and heaven at war? The divine mansion in the world should be the goddess Athena. Elsa's eyes moved slightly, and she wanted to continue asking. But she also knew that her disguised identity and what she said just now would definitely arouse the other party's suspicion. So after thinking about it for a while, I prepare to turn around and leave. She is going to find a chance to catch a demon in the town and ask if there is another way to get to the world. Elsa still doesn't know where her strength is in hell. She believes that even if she gains great strength, she can easily win countless battles, but it doesn't mean she is completely invincible. There must be many powerful beings in hell. For example, Mephisto, who has repeatedly fought wars with saints on earth. She doesn't think she can beat Mephisto, so it's better to keep a low profile in hell. And just when Elsa was about to turn around and leave, a thick voice suddenly came from her ear. Lord Fallen Angel, may I have the honor to buy you a drink? Elsa paused and looked along the line of sight. On the booth at the farthest corner, a fat man with a beautiful and charming female succubus raised a wine glass with a skull, indicating that it was him who just spoke. Elsa stared at the fat man for a while, then changed her route and walked towards the booth. Along the way, several burly and majestic demons stood in front of Elsa, with a violent smile just about to speak. But a vast and terrifying aura suddenly descended, pressing on the several demons, making the words they were just about to utter swallowed it back. Damn, body can't move. The expressions of several demons immediately became terrified, as if their minds and bodies had been completely separated. Elsa glanced indifferently, skipped a few demons and walked towards the booth. Seeing Elsa coming, the fat man patted the succubus in his arms, and when the succubus left sensibly, the fat man stood up and stretched out his hand to invite Elsa to sit down. Elsa sat down and saw the fat man pick up a wine glass with a skull. She said directly, "No, what do you want to do?" The fat man who was rejected was not angry, but sat down with a smile. During the war between and heaven, an angel actually came to hell. I think you are very brave. I'm not an angel. Ha, as a hunter who has been in for millions of years, I will never be wrong. Although you hide deeply and pretend to be a fallen angel, it is a pity that you still cannot escape my eyes. The fat man showed a seemingly honest but sly smile. I said I'm not an angel. Elsa's tone became very cold. Although she didn't know whether the power came from an angel, she was certain that she was still a human being. The fat man raised his hands as if to surrender. Okay, since you said so, I believe you. What is your purpose? Let me introduce myself. My name is Huss, Hellhunter. Elsa. Well, Elsa, I personally like making friends very much, no matter what your identity is, so maybe I can help you if you have any needs. Huss leaned on the back of the sofa with a thick stick in his mouth. Cigar, puffs a cigarette. Make friends? Huss seemed to see Elsa's vigilance and said with a smile, no matter where the strong are, they are the most popular, and I happen to like to make friends with the strong. Elsa looked directly into Huss' eyes, pondered for a moment and said, I'm going to the world. Okay. Huss said with a smile, I just happened to go drink with an old friend. Boom. 7:43 dazzling, colorful light beams fell, and amidst the resplendent buildings, Sol's majestic figure appeared and stepped out. Heimdall loosened his grip on the hilt of the sword and stepped down from the console. Heimdall. I saw you lost, Thor. Can you still see him? Sorry. Loki has a very powerful force that blocks my sight. Heimdall shook his head. Sol gritted his teeth, and the uncontrollable anger could be seen at a glance. Heimdall pondered. Do you have any clues? Loki should be controlled by someone. Thor let out a breath from his nasal cavity. His chest rose and fell gently, and he said something that made Heimdall frown, and the latter said in surprise, The Kree control Loki? Why? Are they really going to war with Asgard? No, it's not just the Kree people. Thor shook his head, his brows tightened. As you once said, Heimdall, there should be a very terrifying existence behind the Kree people manipulating everything. He controls Loki. There must be a bigger conspiracy. I seem to see a huge catastrophe approaching in the future. What are you going to do? Loki has been evading my tracking, but he has never left the Milky Way, so his target must be within the Milky Way. Sol thought, constantly recalling the previous experience and the king, and fused all the information together. The Sea Madar, you must set your sights on finding Loki. Is God the Father there? Odin is in Odin's sleep. Okay, Sol said as usual. You're going to what to do, Sol? Thor didn't hesitate and twisted his neck. Ha, Loki wants to play hide and seek with me, but he doesn't want me to find him, then wait for him to come to me, Heimdall, and send me to the sanctuary. Time will tell, I answer. For Sol, since he knows that Loki is being manipulated, the existence behind the Kree must have a conspiracy. There is no clue to follow, so he doesn't need to run around like a headless chicken. He just continues to practice in the sanctuary, waiting for Loki to appear again while practicing. However, Sol had a premonition that when Loki appeared here, that turmoil and catastrophe would come. But thinking of this, he suddenly looked up at Heimdall. His eyes moved. Could it be that their goal is the Earth? Chapter 120 in a detached apartment on Queens Boulevard, New York. Nick Fury, who put on home clothes, is leisurely preparing his own lunch. His recipes are classic American steak, lamb chops, fruit salad, and bread, milk. Food has a lot of calories and is easy to handle, which is very suitable for people like him who have a very intensive concept of time. Blowing a classic song from a certain band in the 1980s. There is also a Bluetooth headset hanging on the ear. Z, put the fried steak into the dinner plate, put the wooden spatula on the flat pan and turn off the fire, carry the dinner plate to the living room, put the plate in front of the sofa or the table, and a certain comedy is playing on the big TV screen in front of it. While Fury was enjoying his lunch while leisurely watching a comedy, the voice of Agent Hill came from the Bluetooth headset. Sir, what's the matter, Hill? We detected that Pope Kyle of the Sanctuary has come to New York and is now living in the Century Hotel. Wow. Fury, who was cutting the steak with a knife and fork, paused slightly, narrowed his one-eyed eyes, and then continued to cut and said, This is interesting. What made this dignified Pope suddenly come to New York? What information do you have over there? I'm sorry, sir. She's been quiet so far. Hill replied concisely. Do we need to send agents to follow? Fury held a piece of bread in one hand, took a bite, and said while refusing, tracking a strong person who can easily destroy the Earth and reverse time. I don't believe anyone can do it. Use the network to detect. Don't bother her. I don't want to provoke such an existence. Just when she came to New York for a tour. Maybe this one wakes up from the busy years and is a little curious about the present world. It's impossible for Nick Fury to do such a thing even if he's stupid. So what's the difference between that and looking for something? To track a dangerous person, the premise is to see how dangerous that dangerous person is. Like Kyle, the whole world's control elements are not as dangerous as her. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s way of dealing with it is to ignore it and just pay a little attention. What Fury is more concerned about is this guy really just coming to New York to enjoy the atmosphere of the city that never sleeps? Fortunately, according to Hill's report, when this guy comes to New York, other than going out for a walk, that is, he stays in a hotel in a daze. If he suddenly disappears mysteriously, let alone S.H.I.E.L.D., the entire upper echelon of the United States will be nervous. Sil, what's going on with our superhero team? Smiley face. They recently discovered that a group of extraordinary supercriminals appeared in the South. They robbed many banks and killed more than 30 policemen. They are pursuing them. Very good. The Avengers just need an opponent to run in. Fury appreciated this. Their team will determine our future destiny. By the way, sir, Huss has appeared, and he brought a human being with him. According to our investigation, that person is a woman who mysteriously disappeared in the UK some time ago, and she seems to have a very terrifying energy fluctuation. Interesting. Contact Tony and tell him about this matter. It's best to let our knights get in touch and see what's going on. Yes, sir. The communication was hung up, and Fury continued to eat lunch. After a while, he settled the lunch, then cleared the tableware and kitchen utensils, wiped his hands and made himself a cup of coffee. He came to the balcony and sat on the chair on the balcony superior. Taking a sip of coffee and putting it on the table, he closed his eyes and meditated for a while. Why is there always a bad feeling? What exactly is it? Meow. While Nick Fury was meditating, There was a cat meowing in his ears, and then his legs sank suddenly, as if something jumped onto his legs. He opened his eyes immediately and saw a cat with the orange cat on the necklace was sitting on his lap, staring at him with its little furry head tilted. When he saw the orange cat, Fury grinned. "Hey, my little one, where have you been lately? Where have you been playing again?" He stretched out his hand to pick up the orange cat and kissed the little guy. The orange cat was not angry after being ravaged by the bald braised egg. He just barked a few words, as if answering seriously. Fury couldn't understand the cat's words, so he immersed himself in the pleasure of the Rua orange cat. After a while, the orange cat seemed a little unbearable. It broke free from Fury's grasp, jumped onto the table, and stretched gracefully. Then meowed at Fury. Meow, asterisk, asterisk. This cute little guy cured Furue immediately, and the latter smiled with his aunt and stretched out his finger to nod the little guy's head. Aha, is the little guy reminding me? Are you reminding me? Can you protect me in a big crisis? You're amazing, goo goo, meow. The orange cat tilted its head and let out a soft cry, then gracefully turned around and jumped off the table, disappearing without a trace in the blink of an eye. Seeing such a situation, Fury was not surprised, but picked up the coffee cup beside him and took a sip. Perhaps I should pay a visit. Among the luxury villas in Long Island, New York, Pierce Alexander was eating lunch at the dining table in home clothes and slippers, wearing glasses and holding a newspaper in his hand. Behind is an older nanny who is cleaning. At this moment, his eyes moved, and he suddenly said, "Lily, sir, is there anything I need? I have, Xiaomaheo, something to do today. You can get off work first, and I will come to work tomorrow." "Okay, sir." The nanny Lily didn't ask any further questions. She put down the cleaning tools, took off the scarf and put it away, took the bag and greeted Pierce respectfully, and left the villa. Wait until Lily leaves. The door of the villa opened automatically, and a burly figure in a black leather jacket walked in. "Sir, what's the matter?" "Sir, Pope Kyle of Sanctuary is at the Century Hotel in New York. Nick Fury drove to the Hotel Lyon." "Oh." Pierce swallowed the food in his mouth, put down the knife and fork, took off his eyes, stood up and looked at his subordinates. His seemingly cloudy eyes were full of shrewdness. He actually found the Pope? That makes some sense. Chapter 121. The Clingy Yuan Devourer. What would make you contact the Pope who is almost godlike? Fury. As the former director of S.H.I.E.L.D., Pierce is extremely capable, and his wisdom is far beyond that of ordinary people. Naturally, there is no need to mention it, but it is so. He is also very fond of Nick Fury, the current director who was personally selected by himself. Fear. Because no one knows better than him how capable and deep-minded this person is. After getting along for so many years, Pierce dared not say that he completely understood his mind. How many secrets Nick Fury hides in his heart, he still doesn't know. Paying more and more attention naturally made him pay more attention to Nick Fury's every move. The people he placed in S.H.I.E.L.D. were to a large extent watching Nick Fury for him as eyeliners. More uneasy, especially the Avengers. Among the many plans of S.H.I.E.L.D., Pierce is also an insider. He knows all about it, and the same is true for the Avengers plan. In the 1990s, when Nick Fury was not the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., he secretly planned to form a team composed entirely of supernatural abilities, the Avengers. 743 This plan was submitted to him, who was still the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., but he completely rejected it. He can agree to form a team of superpowers, but he absolutely cannot tolerate a high degree of freedom of authority. This is completely contrary to his philosophy, and it is a completely ridiculous condition. This plan was strongly rejected by him. Unexpectedly, after Nick Fury became the director, he still promoted the plan and it was very successful. Even if there is interference from external factors, the compromise of the government is still enough to prove that Nick Fury is excellent. And most importantly, he didn't even have the chance to pick peaches. The internal members of the Avengers are extremely scattered, but no matter who they are, there is nothing he can do. Whether it is the will of Tony or Captain Rogers, they will never allow outsiders to intervene. Bruce Banner had thought about it, but even if there were no Avengers, there would still be pressure from Thunder General Ross, which was hard to deal with. As for the mutants who became Omega level because of Phoenix Girlchain, he didn't even have the idea of attacking them. After all, his subordinates are loyal to him. If the other party completely ignores the psychic ability and directly reads the memory, then he will be completely exposed, and he cannot bear the other party's anger. The two ace agents are Fury's people, and they can't win over it all. The only one who has a chance is Johnny the Ghost Rider, but what is the use of such a person? The other party is not a magic side, but a test, a monster who can break through the speed of sound when driving a motorcycle. If you are caught by such a person, your soul might be burned and you will have no chance of going to hell. Nick Fury quickly formed such a monster at this time, which completely caught him off guard. This made Pierce's original plan not to say completely shelved, but at least delayed for many years. He didn't believe that Hawkeye and Black Widow would have no contact with him at all. Once Nick Fury found out about his details, it would definitely usher in a catastrophe. Under the calm water surface, there is energy brewing to erupt at any time. If he is going to launch the plan, the Avengers must be resolved. But before he could follow up with his plan, Fury actually went to see the monster who was suspected of having participated in the ancient battle of the gods. He didn't believe that Fury had drunk too much at home. "What are you trying to do, Fury?" Pierce's eyes became deep. "Pay close attention to the Century Hotel, but don't deliberately approach it." "Yes, sir." "I hope you don't do stupid things, Fury. I don't want to kill you just yet." In the quiet villa, Pierce's faint and indifferent voice, "Befa" came. Century Hotel. This is a 5-star hotel in New York. Its level of luxury makes even ordinary middle-class people dare not come here for consumption. What Kyle lives in is the presidential suite, and the daily consumption is $150,000. This is her 3rd day there. It was this day, and it was also the last day that Kyle stayed here. Today, Kyle wore a black leather trench coat, a white shirt, a tie, and close-fitting black leather pants, making her look like an elegant lady in the dark. Princess. The temperament is noble and beautiful. She put on white boots and sat on the balcony, her legs crossed gracefully. In his arms, he held an orange cat. The big fat orange cat stayed lazily in Kyle's arms, comfortably enjoying the caress of Kyle's jade hand, squinting its eyes and purring. Kyle was not surprised by the orange cat that suddenly appeared in front of her an hour ago, because she could tell the identity of the little guy the moment the orange cat appeared. Yuan devouring beast. One of the most peculiar races in the universe. Although it looks like an orange cat on the outside, it is actually very powerful. The race of the Yuan Devourer belongs to oviparous breeding, and the Yuan Devourer lays hundreds of eggs at a time, and it does not have many natural enemies in the universe. In addition, this little guy's stomach is very strange. Its stomach capacity is so large that it can even hold the entire universe in it, which is equivalent to a dimensional pocket, because there are many dimensional bubbles in its stomach. Because of this, it has the ability to cross dimensions. The little guy itself has a mysterious origin, but his personality is very good. In essence, he likes groups with special energy, which will attract his attention, such as Captain Marvel, who was born because of the accidental explosion of the Rubik's Cube in the universe. According to Kyle's observation, this little guy is very strong. Completely compared to the existence of the subcelestial parent, in terms of equivalent conversion, it belongs to the fight between Thanos and the Orange Cat, and I am afraid that it will be very difficult. But the little thing was in danger, but it happened to find Kyle. Because the small universe on Kyle's body, or the divine power, is so infatuated by the little guy. It looks like he is completely unwilling to leave after being posted. Looking at the posture, he can't wait to cling to Kyle for 24 hours and want to kiss and hug him. Hold high. Kyle also likes this clingy little guy, cute and cute. Even if she is a goddess now, she can't resist it. Chapter 122. The Virgo of the Seventh Sense, and the elevator door opened on this floor of the hotel, and Nick Rouet, who was wearing a black windbreaker, came out. Taking a deep breath, stepping on the clean and expensive red carpet, walk along the aisle to the most luxurious presidential suite on this floor. When he came to the door, before he pressed the doorbell, the door suddenly opened automatically. Fury's one eye moved slightly, but he remained calm. He wasn't surprised at all by the person who noticed his arrival. He licked his lips unconsciously, suppressed the tension in his heart, and walked along the door with steps in. As soon as you enter the door, you will see the luxurious jaw-dropping suite hall, but you don't see the figure of that person. However, for some reason, it seems that under the influence of a mysterious force, Fury unconsciously walks along the other side of the hall. Directions: go. Smiley face. After passing through a wooden door, I saw a beautiful figure sitting on a rocking chair outside the huge floor-to-ceiling window. Fu Rue originally thought that he, who had experienced countless life and death, had forgotten the tension and anxiety, but now, he felt this emotion again. He forcibly calmed down, skipped the floor-to-ceiling windows, and stepped into the huge balcony. Next to him was the center of New York City, with the surrounding buildings one after another, and the busy traffic on the street. Looking at it from this perspective, it was quite a sight. My lord, Nick, director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Fury, takes the liberty of visiting, looking at the beautiful and indifferent woman in front of me like an iceberg. I seem to see the sonorous momentum of thousands of horses in a trance. Although the other party does not make any movements, the strong and heavy pressure is enough to make any ordinary person's heart burst. For this godlike existence, Fury didn't dare to neglect it all, and his tone was extremely respectful. But when he noticed the orange cat Goo Goo in Kyle's arms, Fury was a little surprised. He didn't expect the little guy Goo Goo to run to this person. It seems to be very comfortable. At this time, Kyle stroked the little orange cat, looked up at Fury, and then looked at the city in the distance. When he noticed that a red figure was constantly shuttling over the building above a certain block, the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. "Hook," casually said. "You don't seem to be afraid of me." These words made Fury feel relieved immediately. His figure was tall and straight, and the wind blowing from the top made his windbreaker flutter, and he said in a deep voice, "As the saints under the command of the goddess Athena, I believe that you will naturally have no harm to human beings. If so, why should I be afraid? It's quite nice to say. It's worthy of being the king of secret agents." Kyle sneered and didn't care. Just listen to this. As far as this guy's personality is concerned, he doesn't trust anyone by nature, and he will be afraid of all people or gods who may cause harm to the earth and even human beings. So her words were very straightforward. "You just don't have the ability to make me afraid. Otherwise, I believe your attitude towards us would not be like this. This is the nature of human beings. This is the instinct engraved in the genes. They are born to fear and fear the strong." Fury shook his head. Kyle agrees with this point. This is the instinct of the creatures in the universe, and it is the same for any intelligent race. So, what's the purpose of letting you, who is full of vigilance, rush to the door? Don't you know? Fury pointed. Kyle still maintained an indifferent face. "Don't use such ridiculous low-level words to me. For you, I am too lazy to read your memories." Speaking bluntly and even slightly sarcastically, Fury was not only not angry, but also relaxed. What Kyle seemed to disdain actually revealed a piece of news. That is, Kyle has no interest in the human group at all. To put it simply, she has no interest in conspiracy, calculation, struggle, etc. between human beings, and her focus is not on human beings at all. This made Fury very happy. For a powerhouse of this level, her words are highly credible. One of Fury's goals has already been answered, and he continued, "I want to know, will the Earth usher in a greater crisis in the future? What do you want to say?" Noticing the disappearance of the red figure traveling through the steel jungle, Kyle looked away and looked at Fury. "Will the gods start a war, and will it affect the Earth?" Facing Kyle's gaze, Fury's scalp tightened, and the pressure that came to him without anger and self-importance almost made his heart and lungs stop suddenly, but he still gritted his teeth and asked the question he was most concerned about. What the Parthenon saw at the beginning was a matter of concern to the entire high-level human beings. This is like a sword of Damocles hanging above the head, which may fall down and destroy the world at any time. For the fragile Earth, it simply cannot bear the aftermath of the War of the Gods. Once it is opened in the future, it will inevitably be a devastating disaster for the entire human civilization. The Battle of the Gods. Kyle read it silently, and then nodded in Fury's one-eyed. The Battle of the Gods will definitely start, but it is not what you imagined, and it will not affect the world. Boom! As soon as these words came out, Nick Fury's heart set off monstrous waves. He bit his lips tightly, and his heart was as cold as a winter. Sure enough, the existence of the gods has been concluded, and in the future, there will be a huge war. The gods of Greek mythology, Norse mythology, hell, heaven, aliens, Kree, Skrull, Ashi Empire, etc. have already formed in Fury's mind. A picture that is terrifying. In this picture, Fury sees human civilization, and the Earth is like a piece of fat that can be torn apart at any time. This chaotic distribution of forces makes it impossible for Fury to even see what the future of mankind is going to be. Is the destiny of mankind to be destroyed, or keep evolving? Fury couldn't even imagine it. The only good news is that the Battle of the Gods will not affect the world, and what the goddess is doing now is to protect the world and the Earth, at least not so desperate. Kyle frowned slightly. Why did this guy think so strange all of a sudden? It's amazing to think about it, but she didn't bother to explain, or she didn't care what this guy thought at all. The atmosphere became a little depressing for a while. It took a long time for Fury to calm down. His lips moved, and he wanted to say something, but he still swallowed what he wanted to say and changed the subject. "I thank Goddess Athena for her kindness and protection for the human race." "Oh, you are very smart. You know what you can't say. You have to thank you for your calmness." While speaking, Kyle's eyes narrowed slightly, and the danger in it almost turned into substance. Fury's originally tall and straight body immediately bent a little, and the overwhelming heavy pressure pressed on his body like a mountain, and he even smelled a strong smell of blood in his nasal cavity. Creak! He even heard the wailing of his own body bones. Meow! At this time, the orange cat let out a light cry, and it was precisely because of this sound that all the pressure disappeared immediately, as if it was just an illusion. At this time, Fury's back was soaked in cold sweat, and a few drops of cold sweat hung on his forehead. Self-righteous, proud, vigilant, thinking that everything you do is for order and peace, but unfortunately you don't have the ability to really control the situation. Selfishness will bring disaster. I hope you can bear the result of this disaster. Ong! I saw the figures of Kyle and the orange cat disappearing slowly, leaving some meaningful words. And Fury just stood there in a daze, his eyes swept to the city, and the meaning of this sentence kept echoing in his mind. For some reason, he felt a little cold, which was the coldness that penetrated the soul. Is this a warning? Fury murmured. He thought a lot. Isn't S.H.I.E.L.D. just researching the most unknown and dangerous things in the world? Could it be what this person said was true? As if thinking of something, Nick Fury's eyes flashed deep. Nick Fury's emotions were fluctuating at this time, and his brows were full of dignity. He would not take Kyle's warning to heart. After thinking about it, a certain plan of S.H.I.E.L.D. would bring huge disasters to the future Earth. He is the biggest source of disaster. It also means that once this incident really happens, he will also bear the cause and effect. Want to stop it? Sanctuary. Above the rolling sea, a figure flew upside down against the sea, and finally hit the beach heavily, splashing fine sand all over the sky. Bah! 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 In the middle of the deep pit, a hand came up and Soul, who was covered in fine sand, stood up in embarrassment, wiped it with his hand a few times, then stretched out his hand, and saw the sea surface in the distance. The baby hammer broke through, splashing water all over the sky back in hand. He stepped out of the bunker and looked up to the sky. Boom! With a roar, a burly figure fell from it, and when it was about to fall to the ground, the whole person stepped on the sand as softly as a feather. This sense of contradiction is extremely eye-catching, but it has a harmonious beauty. Looking at Bart, who was bare-chested, showing strong muscles full of tangled androgen, wearing only beach pants, Soul shook his head and said bitterly, "How long has it been? I just can't last in your hands? 20 minutes? Are you saints monsters? Why are you making progress so fast? If you didn't tell me, I would definitely think that you must be descendants of some ancient race." When he came to the sanctuary, he couldn't wait to find Bart, who was practicing, but the cruel fact was that he was defeated. The whole process was almost crushed, and Soul clearly felt the growth of the other party visible to the naked eye, and he became stronger by leaps and bounds. Bart was strong before, but he could barely fight back. But now... Bart laughed loudly. "Don't get me wrong, Saul. I haven't done my best yet." These heart-wrenching words made Soul even more decadent and helpless. The longer he got along with these people, the more powerless he felt. "Hey Bart, Saul, it's time to eat." Tina's crisp and clear voice came from the beach in the distance. Seeing Soul's decadent appearance, Bart smiled and hugged Soul and walked towards Tina, leaving a row of footprints on the sand. Not long after walking, I saw Tina, Alfred, Santos, Elvis and others, as well as whole cattle and sheep roasting on several piles of bonfires in front of them, and placed on a huge round wooden table in the distance served with fruit salad, fried steak, hairy crab, and many other well-prepared delicacies. "Wow, it looks really rich," Bart shouted happily when he came to the group of partners and saw the rich food. At this time, everyone was wearing cool beachwear, busy arranging tableware, or dealing with the roasted cattle and sheep. It takes a lot of effort for ordinary people to handle cutting. However, no one present was an ordinary person, so Tina glanced at it easily, and the cattle and sheep roasted on the campfire and dripping oil would automatically levitate up, and they turned into pieces that had been cut and landed on the circle. Huge dinner plate on wooden table. The aroma of the food that hits the face makes people drool uncontrollably. Come on, I'm starving to death." Elvis waved his hands and shouted. He couldn't wait to start eating a roast leg of lamb. This is like a signal, and everyone started to enjoy today's sumptuous outdoor lunch. Soul is no exception. He intends to turn his grief and anger into appetite. Even if he loses in battle, he must beat Bart in eating, swallowing the barbecue and drinking the fine wine. Everyone's laughter spread throughout the beach. Not far away were palm trees and other vegetation. Wandering. In this scenic atmosphere, eating delicious food is simply a kind of enjoyment. Even in negative emotions, they are all washed away in the scenery, food, and laughter. Sol grinningly tore a large piece of mutton with his teeth. Feeling the delicious taste, he couldn't wait to swallow it. He laughed out of joy, without the depression he had started at all. Hey, why are you? Senzabu and the others? While eating and chatting, Sol found that there were actually a few fewer people present and asked doubtfully after swallowing the food. Oh, that guy Senzabu broke through the seventh sense. He said he was communicating with the Buddha. I don't quite understand it. It sounds very convoluted. The others are in the main sanctuary to feel the stars and step up their cultivation. Bart, who was fighting a king crab, said. Chapter 123. The Man Who Controls Loki, 7th Sense. Sol turned his head to look. His mouth was oily, and he was adding that expression, which was quite funny. But Sol didn't care at all. He cared more about Senzabu's breakthrough to the 7th sense. Senzabu has reached the Heavenly Father. Class? The shock of this news made Sol even forget the delicious roast leg of lamb in his hand. His eyes were full of shock. Having been with Bart and others for so long, he also knows what the cultivation system of the Saint Seiya is, and he also knows that the 7th sense is equal to the Heavenly Father, which is too unexpected for Sol. He didn't expect that he would just go back to Asgard to pursue Loki's clues, and when he returned to the sanctuary again, Senzabu would have reached the level of the Heavenly Father. You must know that it is at the same level as his mark, sign mark, hashtag 3, 4 and 7, 2 Father King Odin. Sol originally thought that Bart and the others would progress fast enough, but it turned out that 743 had an even more perverted guy. According to your calculations, he has indeed reached the 7th sense. I originally thought I was the first saint who broke through to the 7th sense. Bart refused the delicious crab meat in his mouth, with an expression of resignation. The cultivation method of closing the 5 senses and accumulating the small universe is really powerful. I will try it next time. Forget it, Bart. That's a unique cultivation method for Virgo saints, and it doesn't match you. Elvis on the opposite side took a gulp of his fine wine. But I thought of Senzabu being the first to become the 7th sense. Smiley face. The growth rate of that guy's small universe is too fast. According to the Pope, he was born to be a Buddha. However, I will catch up with him. The tone has the joy of breaking through for Senzabu, and also has confidence in himself. His words also aroused the strong fighting spirit of Athena and others. The second breakthrough must be me. I have already felt that the accumulation of the small universe has reached its peak state. After today, I will find a suitable planet to break through. TCH, the second one to reach the 7th sense is of course me, Bear Boy. I'm going to become the strongest saint fighter, and then we'll see how I can defeat you one by one. Stop talking big, Han. While the boys and girls were talking, the soaring fighting spirit in their eyes almost went straight to the sky, blowing away the clouds in the sky. The strong fighting spirit seemed to be turned into substance, surrounded by phantoms belonging to their own constellations, bursting with holiness and power. Under this sea of strong fighting spirit, Thor was also infected. He took a sip of wine and said boldly, Guys, the Thor of Asgard will become the strongest. Just wait. I will use my thunder to crush your fighting spirit. The domineering roar resounded through the sky, just as the waves hit the reef in the distance and made a huge sound. The interweaving and fitting added to its momentum. It's just that the moment Sol released his bold words, everyone immediately fell silent and stared at Sol with a pair of eyes that have drifted away, with dangerous expressions on their faces. Tina even began to look at her white hands and slender red nails. The phoenix eyes who narrowed their eyes and looked at the acupuncture points all over Sol's body seemed to be thinking about how to use the scarlet poison needle to educate this brash guy. Sol was taken aback by the eyes of his partners, and the strong sense of danger sent him so frightened that he almost rolled and crawled and ran away. Hastily laughed dryly, waved his hands, and withdrew his rhetoric. I'm just kidding, guys. Just exaggerate the atmosphere. Exaggerate the atmosphere. How heroic he was before. How humble he is now. This is Thor, the of thunder in Asgard. This sincere explanation made Bart and others withdraw their dangerous eyes. The atmosphere returned to normal, and the big guys continued to enjoy the food. At this time, Sol wiped off the cold sweat that didn't exist on his forehead, and carefully gnawed on the leg of lamb that hadn't been gnawed. It's scary. Sol laughed bitterly while gnawing on the leg of lamb, while annoyed at his boss. He was not afraid of fighting. On the contrary, he liked fighting, but that didn't mean he liked being beaten. A real warrior is not only fearless, but also has to know what it means to advance and retreat. He is a warrior and the future king of Asgard. Sol can only comfort himself in this way. He is not cowardly, he is just avoiding tactically, and he will not challenge these guys until he becomes stronger. Oh, by the way, Sol, are you looking for your brother? How is the result? At this moment, Tina suddenly spoke. Sol shook his head. His face became serious. He threw away the gnawed leg bones in his hands and said, I found him, but he disappeared again. Missing again? That's right. Someone has controlled Loki. These words immediately attracted the attention of Bart and others, and Alfred said softly, Loki's magic level is not low, and there should not be too many people in the universe who can control him. In the eyes of this group of people, Loki is not considered strong, but he is definitely much stronger than most people in the universe. And if someone like Loki can be controlled, then the opponent's strength must be crushing. That's right, at first I thought Ronan, the supreme accuser of the Carey Empire, did it, but later I found out that there is a stronger behind-the-scenes man behind him. Sol nodded. A stronger behind-the-scenes man? The supreme accuser of the Kree Empire, this is already a very powerful character in the universe. There is a stronger existence behind such a character, so the identity of this behind-the-scenes man must not be simple. Na picked up the fruit salad next to her and analyzed it while eating. It seems that both the Carey Empire and the Black Hands behind the scenes have already set their sights on Asgard. Elvis thought 5.0 thoughtfully. Alfred added, maybe an Earth. These words made everyone's eating movements stop. Their eyes were fixed, and the thinking storm was running rapidly. They could awaken the small universe, and their thinking and wisdom completely surpassed that of human beings. Everyone present could hear the meaning from it. Exploring. Bart lowered his voice. That's right, that's what I thought of too. Although I don't know why, the mastermind behind the scenes has already set his sights on the Earth and Asgard, using Loki to test the two countries. Thor nodded in agreement, before he had already thought of this when communicating with Heimdall. A very cautious person. It seems that his strength is not strong enough, Alfred commented. The last guy who said to make my uncle surrender has been blasted to pieces by me, and you are the third. With a click, Rocket pulled out a huge weapon and shouted in a fiery tone. Chapter 124. If they are confident enough in their own strength, then the opponent does not need to use Loki at all to launch a war directly and attack Asgard or Earth. He knows that there is Odin in Asgard, and he should also know that there is Gu-E, the supreme mage on Earth. Maybe he should also know the existence of His Majesty, but he doesn't know the strength of His Majesty. Earth or Asgard has something he is interested in, and its strength has a certain strength, but it is not as good as the supreme mage and Odin. There should be a huge army with a cautious and cunning character. Who can you think of, Sol? After combining all the clues, Tina looked at Sol. Everyone is on the Earth, although Sol usually talks about some information about the universe, but there are still limitations after all, so he can only ask Sol. The latter frowned and kept thinking about it, but finally shook his head. I don't know, maybe I should ask Heimdall. Interesting, if you need to contact me, Sol. Bart picked up the glass and lightly held a cup with Sol, and then drank it down. This is like a decryption game, but at the cost of a huge war. This matter must be reported to the Pope. Certainly. But before he finished speaking, Kyle's unique and cold voice came from beside his ear. I already know at this point, you should handle this matter yourself. Okay. Everyone looked at each other and shrugged their shoulders, but most of them didn't take it seriously. It wasn't pride or arrogance, but confidence in their own strength. Now most of the people present are on the verge of reaching the seventh sense. Given some time, a dozen or 20 saints with the seventh sense will be born, which is equivalent to more than 20 Heavenly Father-level powerhouses. With this kind of lineup, even if the opponent is a strong player at the single universe level, it will be deflated. It can be said that the so-called Black Hand behind the scenes should pray that he will not be targeted by them, otherwise it will undoubtedly be death. When he was about to finish eating, Heimdall's voice rang in Sol's ear. Sol. Heimdall. Sol wiped the corner of his mouth with a napkin. I found Loki. Where? In Andromeda. How did Loki go? I don't know, but he seems to be looking for something. Sol nodded. Okay, I'll go back right away. After speaking, he looked at the others and Bart waved his hand. Okay, you go, you don't need to clean up the rest. I'm afraid you may break the tableware. Thanks for the invite, man. Thor stood up, stretched out his hand without looking back. and saw Thor's hammer standing quietly on the beach in the distance, suddenly soaring into the air, and was summoned back to Thor's hands. Bart smiled and said, "If you need anything, you can call us. You know the way." Sol grinned and didn't say much, and saw the lightning flashing all over the sky. The mighty armor emerged, and the ground was followed by a beam of colorful beams, and his figure disappeared into the sky along with the beam of colorful beams. Bart looked up at the sky and saw the disappearing colorful rainbow, and said involuntarily, "Sol really cares about Loki. They are brothers. Hey, Bart, don't be lazy. Come and clean up the dishes." Tina, who was clearing the table, yelled dissatisfied, "I'm coming." In the vast starry sky, a group of space battleships are shuttled at high speed, firing dense artillery fire while flying, and at the forefront, a small red and blue spaceship shaped like a bird is dexterously shuttling through the dense artillery fire. Boom, boom, boom. Groups of explosive flames are like fireworks constantly blooming, making the originally quiet starry sky lively and gorgeous. Inside the spaceship, the short rocket raccoon on the co-pilot's seat manipulated the joystick to avoid the gunfire while cursing. "Damn bugs, those are still chasing them. Mr. Rocket is going to smash them to pieces." And the man in the brown-red leather armor on the main driver's seat was also manipulating the joystick, rolling his eyes. "This is my spaceship. Why are you competing with me for the right to pilot? Of course my stance technique is better. This level of artillery fire is not worth mentioning to me." Rocket Raccoon yelled confidently. "Now is not the time to fight for these things. Quill, Rockets, get us out of here quickly." In the driver's seat behind the two, a woman with green skin and a strong figure shouted angrily. Next to the woman was a burly gray-skinned bald man who roared angrily, "Those Kree people are Ronan's lackeys if I kill them." "Groot," a tree man beside him shouted, as if expressing something. "Walter?" "No, no, no," Quill yelled while driving. "I think if you are not blind, you should be able to see the Kree spaceships behind you. There are hundreds of them. Let's turn around. They will be burned to pieces." "Oich, I like Drax's idea." Raccoon Rocket laughed with a rebellious look. This crazy look made Quill feel tired. If it wasn't for selling that ball, he would have kicked these out of his spaceship at 743. But what the Rocket said was right. If the chase continues like this, it will be hit by the opponent sooner or later. Quill glanced at the dashboard on the bridge, and his eyes lit up when he saw the dense red dots displayed on it. "Rocket, there is a group of meteorites in front. We took them in together. The Kree spaceship is fast in a straight line, but its turning flexibility is not as good as my Milan." "Good idea, man," Rocket sighed. "Ever since I saw the small and flexible spaceship Milan plunge into the huge chain of meteorites, and the spaceship driven by the Kree behind followed without the slightest hesitation. But in the next second, in the blink of an eye, more than a dozen carry warships collided with the meteorite, and were immediately smashed to pieces, turning into flames. And the impact of the explosion drove the meteorite group to impact in all directions. In addition, many carry warships behind were affected, and with the flames, more than a dozen warships were hit and destroyed. Seeing the clusters of flames, Quill, Rocket, and Drax in the Milan shouted excitedly, "Yo-ho, you guys, go to with me, it's rocket time now." Chapter 125, Damn Kree, you're all going to be buried here today. Everyone was extremely excited. Even the green-skinned woman couldn't help cheering. Next, just as Quill and Rocket said, with the excellent driving skills of the two, the small Milan dexterously shuttled among the dense meteorites. The carry spaceships behind them hit meteorites one after another and were eventually destroyed, becoming wreckage floating in it. Seeing the flames in the sky behind, Quill and Rocket clapped their hands excitedly to celebrate, but they were excited for a while. Their eyes focused on each other, paused for a moment, and then immediately shook off each other's hand with disgusted expressions. "You have to thank me for saving you, Rocket. Don't talk about it. It's obviously my uncle who saved you, you stupid earthling." The two began to argue. The green-skinned woman behind her covered her face with a headache, and just when she was about to stop the two, the spaceship shook violently, helping her to interrupt the quarrel between the two in advance, followed by crazy sirens. Ignoring the quarrel, Quill looked at the dashboard and found that the left wing of the fuselage was malfunctioning. He looked at the dark purple energy beam cannons that had skipped one after another, and immediately said loudly, "The left wing is damaged by 30%. The thrusters are damaged. We can't fly the guy in the back." "Rocket, I'm looking for it." Rocket frantically clicked on the star chart in front of him, finally found something, and immediately said loudly, There is a planet that can be forced to land 1,000 kilometers away. How can he be further away? Quill immediately complained loudly, then gritted his teeth, his face showing a bit of sternness. Okay, we have to play a game of hide and seek with the guy behind. Hey, I like hide and seek. Rocket lowered his voice, showing a crazy look here. Kazuki, the two behind him, did not make any speech at all. This is the moment to decide everyone's fate. Boom, boom, boom. The Milan's wings were damaged, its engine was damaged, and its speed dropped sharply. The speed of the carry spacecraft behind it was originally slightly slower than that of the Milan, but now it directly surpassed it. Pouring. Fortunately, whether it is Quill or the rockets, the two saw that their driving skills were almost brought to the extreme. The energy shield, the rear-mounted weapon, and the arc movement cooperated with each other, making it impossible for the carry spacecraft to pull directly into the distance for a while. There has been a stalemate for a long time. Finally, Quill and Rocket saw the planet they were going to reach ahead. This planet is black, full of desolation and darkness, and one can tell at a glance that there is no life here. However, Quill and Rocket did not hesitate to drive the Milan to make an emergency landing on this desolate planet. In the billowing misty clouds, the Milan rushed out of it, and the left wing slanted toward the ground with black smoke, and the speed was very fast. The surface of this planet was full of darkness and mud, and the pitch-black mountain rocks were of varying heights. First, there are bottomless cracks, and there are endless flat pools on the ground. Quill's eyes swept away, and he immediately drove the Milan towards a jungle-like area full of rocks. Although the body was constantly swaying, it was still because of the excellent posture technique that the Milan landed successfully. On both sides are more than 100 meters of rock mass, which happens to be a natural shelter, which can block the sight of Carrie's pursuers for the Milan. Quill even turned off the engine and pressed the shielding function. In an instant, the sound of the engine starting disappeared immediately, and everything became quiet. Several people looked up at the sky along the windshield, and sure enough, after a while, the Kree spaceship flashed by. We have to leave as soon as possible, otherwise, the Kree will most likely come after us. Quill breathed a sigh of relief. But once we start the engine and leave, the carry spacecraft can still capture it. The rocket continued. Then start the space jump, the green-skinned woman suggested. But this proposal was immediately rejected by Quill and the rocket. Seeing that the green-skinned woman was a little puzzled, Quill explained, "Our wings are damaged, and one of the engines is almost damaged. It is impossible to start the space jump. Even if the jump is successful, the spaceship, because of the damaged shell, it was torn apart by the expansion of space turbulence. Then fix it. It will take at least a day and a night to repair the wings and engines. By then, the follow-up carry spacecraft must have surrounded the planet long ago." Rocket leaned back in his chair. "What should I do? We have to find a way to deal with that spaceship." Rocket stopped suddenly as he spoke, and then pointed forward. "I don't think it should be used." Everyone was startled, and immediately looked in the direction the rocket pointed. At some point, a figure stood in front of him, wearing a green windbreaker armor, a helmet like a golden bull, and holding a gem-studded scepter, looking at everyone indifferently. And in the sky, the carry spaceship that had originally left also stopped in the sky, and one by one soldiers landed with small aircraft, overwhelmingly surrounded several people. "Well, there seems to be no other way. Drax, are you ready to kill?" Quill didn't answer. Drax, on the driver's seat behind the rocket, unbuttoned the safety buckle, showed a ferocious smile, and said murderously, "I can't help but chop off their heads a long time ago." "Very good." Quill pressed the button and saw the windshield open in front of him. Everyone jumped up and stepped on the shell of the spaceship. King Zhao's head, looking at the figure in front full of fear, facing the densely packed muzzles, also without the slightest fear. "I appreciate your bravery, so as long as you are willing to hand over the universe spirit ball, I am willing to let you go." The corners of the mouth of the handsome man in armor and holding a scepter curled up, and a slightly magnetic voice came out of his mouth. "Who are you? When did the Asgardians work for the Kree?" Quill stared at the man with a slight sarcasm. The man didn't take it seriously. "Loki and you are about to submit to this name.